Everyone that we are live streaming this meeting on video via the City of Hobart YouTube channel. For the purposes of the recording, can people just wait for me to announce them before speaking, and request also that all mobile devices be either turned off or put to silent. I note that we have Alderman Sexton online but present. Everyone else is
here.
And we have two other elected members not present at the moment, but we haven't received apologies, so they may just be running late. I would also just like to acknowledge and welcome a new member of the senior staff here this evening. Jackie Allen is our new Director of Connected City, and welcome, Jackie, to your first council meeting. Okay, acknowledgement to country to start us off. Just to acknowledge that in recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we are meeting, and pay my respects to the Tasmanian Aboriginal community who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and rights. The minutes of our last meeting were from 28th of February. Deputy Lord Mayor, would you like to move those?
Move those, Lord Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Are those in favour? All those in favour of those items? Those minutes, say aye. Any against? That's carried. Item 2 on our agenda is the transfer of agenda items. Are there any items proposed to be transferred in the open or the closed agenda? There being none, I'll move on now to, I don't have any communications from the Chair, and we haven't had a council workshop, so there's no notifications of council workshops. So we'll move on now to public question time. We have two public questions we've received written notice of, so I'll ask Ms Louise Bloomfield to come forward and ask her question first.
The park that's installed on Elizabeth Street are presently a disgrace. Nearly 50% of the plant life is now dead, and it looks terrible. I had pictures sent to me last week evidencing that on 12:20 p.m. both Thursday, the 10th of March, and Friday, the 11th of March, there was no one even using this area at all. When are they going to be admitted as an utter failure for the area and removed? The small businesses in the area, including mine and other members of the Confederation of Greater Hobart Business, need these parking spaces back.
Thank you, Ms Bloomfield. I am going to take your question on notice. It was received on Friday, and we will provide a full response in writing, and that response will be sent to you and published in a future council agenda. Thank you. We have another question. Is Mr Trenton Hoare here? Would you like to come and ask your question? Or two questions?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and good evening, Council. As an avid watcher of Council's activities and a Hobart City constituent, I have been quite disgusted by the behaviour from some elected members in recent times, particularly from the male aldermen and councillors. Behaviours such as shouting over the top of the chair within the chamber when they have made a ruling, and condescending comments towards the chair and or other elected members are just a few I would like to highlight. Appallingly, the victims of this horrific behaviour are the female elected members. As a constituent, I find this incredibly disrespectful, especially when the Lord Mayor, Deputy Lord Mayor and the CEO of Hobart City Council are women, powerful women. So my question is, how is Council retaining and enforcing respectful workplace culture within the Council chamber? And my second question, is it necessary for the male elected members of Council to reread Council's respectful workplace policy and or attend some personal development training regarding this issue?
Thank you, Mr Hoare. As your question was received also on Friday afternoon, I am going to take your question on notice and provide you with a written response in due course, and it will also be published in the council agenda. Thank you. So, is there any other questions from the floor? Would you like to come and ask your question? And just introduce yourself, please.
Have
Good evening. My name is Doug Cooper. My question without notice is to the Lord Mayor. Did you, on the morning of Saturday, the 26th of February, direct any staff to raise certain flags on the facade of the town hall on that day? And if so, why? And on what authority? And if so, who else did you consult? And why did you not notify the Chief Executive Officer of your action? Thank you.
Look, I'm probably take it on notice, but I think this was asked at the last council meeting, and I said no, I did not do that. So
This is an entirely different question, Lord Mayor.
it sounds similar to me, but no, I did not direct any staff member to raise the flags. Thank you. Okay, so we move on now to the responses to public questions taken on notice.
So I'll move those, Lord Mayor, that we received and noted.
On notice, well, off from the floor, or is just the one? Yeah. So we just. Oh, you had one too. Just like to introduce yourself, please. It's just for the recording. It's not.
Switched on?
It's being recorded, I think.
There we go. Is it on now?
It can be heard. Oh, can you? You can't hear the question. I don't think they've said anything. Do you want to say test?
Test.
Yes,
Can
yeah.
you hear it? Okay.
No, it can be heard. Yeah.
Right. My name's Tammy Milne, and good evening, Lord Mayor, and other aldermen on the council tonight, or councillors, sorry. My question is basically with regard to the moving of the UTAS Council into the UTAS campus into the city. So I'm an alumni of UTAS, and when I studied there, the physical buildings and the access of the buildings are dreadful. Like, it's so inaccessible for people with disabilities, and at a time when we're trying to bring forward a culture of inclusiveness, one would think that the movement of the university into the city will be both a financial positive for the city and a positive for the greater community for better access. So better access to buildings, better access to classes, better access to academics. So my question to council is, will there be facilitation from the council to make this a smooth transition towards moving the campus into the city? Thank you.
Okay, so I think that we will take that question on notice, and I think we've got the gist of that question. Even though we couldn't all hear it really clearly, the recording will have picked it up. So we will provide a written response, and that will also be in the next council agenda. So thank you for your question. Thanks everyone for your questions. So we're now moving on to the responses that have been provided to the questions previously taken on notice, moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Alderman Briscoe. So there's two responses there in writing. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. That's carried unanimously. Are there any petitions?
No, Lord Mayor.
Petitions. And there's no supplementary items, I don't think. So moving on to indications of pecuniary or conflicts of interest. Do any elected members wish to indicate an interest in any item appearing on the council agenda? There being none. Moving on now to City Planning Committee. Item 9.1 is Unit 3, number 13, Wayne Avenue, Sandy Bay. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is a motion, this is an item considered under the City of Hobart Interim Planning Scheme, 313 Wayne Avenue, Sandy Bay, and Common Land of Parent Title, change of use to visitor accommodation. Lord Mayor, it was a 3-3 tie in relation to this motion, but I think Councillor Harvey has an alternative motion to what was listed.
Thank you, Deputy.
313 Wayne Avenue. 313 Wayne Avenue.
Harvey.
Lord Mayor, I'd like to move the motion that pursuant to the Hobart Interim Planning Scheme 2015, the City Planning Committee, in accordance with the delegations contained in the terms of reference, refused the application for a change of use to visitor accommodation at 313 Wayne Avenue, Sandy Bay, on the basis that it is contrary to the clause 3.1E P2A to F of the Planning Directive number 6. So I'm recommending this for refusal.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Fox. Discussion? Any discussion? Alderman Briscoe?
Just a question, Lord Mayor, through you to the Acting Director. When we got a memo about the sort of strata or body corporate implications of this. So if this was approved, it still wouldn't fit within their rules effectively. Like their own body corporate agreement wouldn't allow this application even if we were to approve it.
Through you, Chair, that is my understanding, that visitor accommodation use requires a separate approval by the body corporate. That is not a matter for consideration by you as planning authority.
Lord Mayor, look, just given that, look, I don't think anything came up during the discussion around this item last week, in my view, to justify this being refused. I think it does, whilst I appreciate some of the concerns about the topic that's being discussed, I think the application itself does meet its requirements under the planning scheme. So I'll foreshadow the officer's recommendation on this, but I don't think it's really necessary to push the point too much on this, because it's a bit of a moot point. Whether or not we approve it or whether or not we don't approve it, their own body corporate wouldn't allow it. So it's almost beside the point. So I'll foreshadow the officer's recommendation.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. I thank Councillor Harvey for moving the motion for refusal. I'd like to just point out that the body corporate has the right to refuse this, and that's not considered under planning jurisdiction. And I've spoken to one of the residents who will be next to this proposed visitor accommodation, who put in a representation, very concerned that it is being turned from long-term tenants who live there currently to visitor accommodation. And this is not, across the way. This is actually adjacent to her property. So it's as you're aware, Lord Mayor, it's a block of 4 apartments, 2-storey apartments, and there is also behind the block of apartments, so in that open space area, there is the surrounding area is characterised by a combination of single and multiple dwellings, as well as assisted living facilities to the immediate west. So in effect, older people living in an assisted living village. So there are long-term tenants there, and there's a close-knit community in that area. There has been no consultation to the body corporate, nor discussion with neighbours when this came was advertised. So it's kind of interesting that how things work in an apartment. So recently purchased and now going to be moved from long-term tenants to short-term vacancy. So the concerns that were raised in the representation, I think, are real. There's going to be noise disturbance. There's only a screen between these outdoor areas, so privacy is an issue, and parking is an issue. So that's not even that sort of overall concern that was raised in the representations about short stay visitor accommodation. This is real for these people, and it is a considerable erosion of their residential amenities. So I'll wholeheartedly support the motion for refusal.
I just have a question, Lord Mayor, to the officers.
Alderman Briscoe.
Can I, to the Acting Director? The officers considered this proposal, and what was your recommendation after considering it from a qualified legal planner's point of view?
Through you, Chair, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Look,
Alderman Zuko.
Lord Mayor, I don't believe we should be even discussing whether or not a body corporate will approve or will not approve, because I think that's a legal matter in between the tenants, and my understanding is that if a body corporate refuses, it can be challenged legally. So I think that's totally irrelevant to the argument. The argument here is whether or not we as a planning authority and our planners in their determination of this property, whether or not it fits within our planning guidelines. I'm no planner, never have been a planner, but when I sort of look at things, my first consideration is what the council officers recommend, and then if I've got a concern, I look at potentially where the council officers may have put their argument where I can argue differently. In reading this report, I came to the council tonight with a viewpoint that I was very, very comfortable with the officer recommendation and officer report. To try and throw in other matters in regards to us determining or not determining this, I think it's totally inappropriate, and nor should we even give any considerations to it. And I would ask that we all strike that out, because I think it's not relevant to a planning application, this planning application. I think what's relevant to this planning application is the considerations of the report. I'm comfortable with the officer report. They've recommended approval, and I believe that that's the way we should be going with this. I understand that there are issues that a number of people have in respect of short stay accommodation. I believe that's an issue that we need to deal with on its own, on whether or not this council wants to sort of implement bylaws, that it can probably go down the track of doing so. And I think that's the only way I believe that we can, if we want to restrict such change of use. So I'll have to support the officer recommendation.
The discussion, Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I take the points that's been raised, and I just want to make a few comments and observations. Firstly, no doubt all of us acknowledge and realize that we are sitting as planning authority and having that hat on. That's the first point, and I don't think anyone here denies that. Point number two is that the recommendation made by the staff in the report, no doubt each one of us in this chamber would agree that there are times when we have supported their position, and there are times when we have not supported their position. And that is a truth, it is a fact of the matter. I am not in any way going to talk about the strata title, because that is not the issue. But I want to re-emphasize the fact, and I go back to clause 3(1)(e)(2), and I read what it says. Visitor accommodation within a strata scheme must not cause an unreasonable loss of residential amenity, having regard to privacy of residents, b, any likely increase in noise. The staff report, page 7, 6.7.5, and I quote, states this: certainly, it is possible that occupants of units staying as guests under a visitor accommodation, use could see an impact of residential amenity either through loss of privacy or through increased noise. Now, the other aspect, I take that because it is my view, it is my interpretation that it will have an impact. Now, furthermore, if you read also the provisions under the visitor objective, and this is what it states, to ensure that visitor accommodation is compatible with the character and use of the area. Now, for me, that particular objective, when it comes to the character or the use of the area, it does not satisfy, and hence I'm quite comfortable to go contrary to the recommendation. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I've just got one question. It might be a tricky one. Just wondering whether the director is aware whether a planning approval may assist an owner in challenging a body corporate ruling, or whether there's any history of that.
Thank you, Chair. I'm aware of a decision which has been through. My understanding is that the body corporate refused a visitor accommodation for a particular property that was challenged to the Recorder of Titles, and that's now been appealed to the Supreme Court. So we will soon have some law to provide some clarity on that issue, but at the moment it's a little bit up in the air.
And just one other thing, just to clarify that the planning guidelines that you're following, that is the Minister for Planning's planning directive on visitor accommodation. Yeah, so we're kind of, it's really what was delivered by the State Planning Minister some years ago.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got a motion from Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Fox. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour, sorry.
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Fox, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas and Alderman Briscoe. That's lost, Lord Mayor, 7 votes to 5.
I think that's
sorry, it's
one.
carried.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on now to item 9.2.
Just a point, Lord Mayor. I just got a text from someone who said the sound that's going out is... I've just sent it a text to Craig. I don't know if he's got it. So the sound quality's going out. It's bad.
Bad?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is. I have experienced that myself. So if everyone can try and be as close to their microphones as possible, but I think we'll let the IT folks know. Okay, item 9.2 is Unit 1, Number 4, Sunvale Avenue, Sandy Bay.
Having sits on the committee, we sometimes get no recommendations from committee. The same applies for 1-4 Sunvale Avenue, Sandy Bay, common land and parent title, partial change of use to visitor accommodation, and I ask Councillor Harvey to move.
Again, Lord Mayor, thank you, Deputy. I'll be moving the same recommendation for refusal as I moved last time.
Okay, so any discussion? I'll second her, sorry. Councillor Fox, any discussion?
So we'll be referring to this particular property, Lord Mayor, not to the previous property. You said the same motion.
Same recommendation.
For refusal under the same grounds.
Same grounds.
Thank you.
Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
Aye.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Fox, Deputy Lord Mayor and Lord Mayor.
Against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas and Alderman Briscoe. And it's carried, Lord Mayor, 7 votes to 5.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 10, which is Alderman Briscoe's motion. So I invite Alderman Briscoe to move his motion.
Lord Mayor, before you do that, I thought to declare an interest.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
so Councillor Sherlock is declaring an interest in item number 10.
No, you're gonna
So
go.
Alderman Briscoe, do you have a motion?
What's the motion? If I may move that for this item, can we suspend standing orders, please?
Second. For the point of...
For what reason? Lord Mayor, I think it's a very important issue, and just in case some elected members may have wish to speak the second time, I think it's appropriate, and I believe that... Or a bit longer. Look, we could go around here. I've got a number of issues that I would like to go through, Lord Mayor. I'll be sitting there asking for an extension of time. I believe that we can save a lot of time by all of those who want to speak a bit longer for asking this extension of time and putting your hand up. I believe if we suspend standing orders, I think we'll get through it quickly anyway, but it just gives an opportunity for those people. As I said, it's a very important issue, and that's the reasons, Lord Mayor.
I don't know the implications of that in terms of just managing debate.
I guess, Lord Mayor, this raises the issue. If we want to have an extended discussion on a topic, the best place for that is at a committee meeting, which is where notices of motion should be considered, I think.
Absolutely, Bill, and if you remember... you're the one that broke it.
I think you've all broken it. But, Lord Mayor, can I just clarify, what's the protocol for speaking? Can you give...
I don't
time
know.
frame, or
I don't know. No, I think there's nothing.
So there's
no
rules
guidance.
now.
No.
If we agree to a suspension of standing orders, so I'm not thinking that's a good idea.
Right. Well, let's put it to the vote, and we'll see. Alderman Zuko's moved to suspend standing orders. Any seconder for that?
Yes, I did second.
Seconded by Alderman Briscoe. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Hands. All those in favour. Oh, no.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Briscoe, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
And against?
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta.
That's good. Fine.
Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Okay.
Lord Mayor, 5 votes to 6.
That's lost, but if people do want to seek extensions of time, then we'll just put that. But I think it just keeps it a little bit more orderly. Okay, so Alderman Briscoe.
Yes, and just I will be asking for an extension of time. I have got a fairly prepared, so, well, yes, I wonder if I could have an extension of time of 4 minutes.
So you'd like 9 minutes in total?
Yes, please. Yes.
So that's moved by Alderman Zuko, seconded by
No, I
Councillor
suggest
Dutta.
2 minutes.
Oh, sorry, we can only do 3.
All right, 3 minutes.
3 minute difference.
Okay. So
Split the difference.
all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously.
I was also, Lord Mayor, as a matter of procedure, we will be asking questions, so my time will stop when I ask those questions, I'm certain. Thank you. So I'll start now. So my time starts now. Have you called for us? I move the motion that's on the books.
Yes, seconded by Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Councillor Coates. My motion is urging the Council to find a means of an inquiry and an officer's report to seek information and evidence to begin to scrutinise
Time's up.
the largest real estate proposal and redevelopment in Australia, in Hobart City's history since its foundation. The massive proposed changes is more than making Hobart a university city. It already is. But the concentration of the complete southern campus to the CBD, that will have significant effects on the Sandy Bay suburb and the CBD that needs to be known beforehand. The university has the largest campus in the state in Hobart, spread over a number of sites, Sandy Bay being the biggest of 100 hectares, less than 2 kilometres from the CBD. We set 70% of the total student space there. The university is a significant employer, has revenues over $700 million a year, has at least 20,000 students in Hobart, I believe, and now owns valuable property holdings purchased for at least $80 million in the CBD over many years. Many of those properties have been left empty, and the land, and some of it has been leased out, or the building's been leased out as visitor or student accommodation. The university is considered under the law as a charity, and it does not pay rates. Its aims are quality teaching and research. But it doesn't mean... can I have the time stopped? Are you okay there, Lord Mayor? Yeah, thank you. But it doesn't mean they should escape scrutiny when they put on their real estate and developer hat. Master plans of the total relocation were released just in 2021, and so the community is now only coming to terms with the extent of the proposal and the ramifications. It is proposed that the UTAS will abandon the Sandy Bay campus to sell, subdivide or lease the land and or buildings, to release significant funds, maybe in the order of billions, just for the residential component of the master plan, develop the CBD as a university campus and provide surplus funds for university purposes. Now, various attempts at communicating their plans and reasons to the public have not been successful to date, in my view, in convincing the public, as evidenced by the mountains of letters to the editor and other articles where the public are demanding scrutiny. They include today the highly respected Jeff Malpas, but there has also been others by Richard Flanagan, Professor Pam Sharp, who I believe is in the audience, one of our first female professors at UTAS and currently associated with the Uni of Melbourne, and many others. We should respect their views. They are the elders of our community. Now, where is the council in all this? Well, seemingly our involvement is under the auspices of the Memorandum of Understanding with the uni dating back to at least 2009 and the much vaunted political city deal between the 4 metropolitan mayors and the state and federal government, and supported, it appears, by the unreleased metro plan by the state government and our own precincts plan, which is in draft form, but neither of which have been endorsed by the full council. Apparently the precincts plan told by the informed by the CEO today to me is that it will come out, the precincts plan will come out in May and at the workshop in full council in June. We are definitely cast by the university as close and valued partners. Whether we should be or should not be won't be determined here tonight. There are good arguments on both sides of the discussion. I believe the organisation should maintain a healthy and respectful relationship, but perhaps more at an arm's length. Now, I'd like the time stop because I'm going to ask you a question, Lord Mayor. The question is, under the Memorandum of Understanding, you were to have regular meetings with the Rufus and Rufus Black, the Vice-Chancellor, and other officers of the university. How many times have you met since 2019? And where are the minutes? And have the minutes been distributed to elected members? I tried to get this answered today and last week through our officers, but that hasn't been forthcoming.
Alderman Briscoe, I think you're talking about the UTAS Hobart City Council Governance Forum, which was a decision of the full council to establish it.
I know that.
And it was unanimously supported.
I'm asking for the numbers of times you've met.
I don't have that detail.
Is it twice a year or
I haven't even necessarily attended them all, so I don't have the record of them. If you've given me, I'll take it on notice and we can give you a response.
All right, so the minutes particularly, I know that committee has met because officers have talked to me about it. Yes, but I have no knowledge of the minutes or the decisions you've made in that group ever communicated with council.
I'm not sure that's correct, but I will take it on notice.
Thank you. It is correct. So no funds...
Why ask the question, Alderman Briscoe?
Because I tried to get the definitive answer and I didn't. So let's continue.
Start clock.
Thank you. Thank you, timekeeper. No funds under the mayor's and the other city deal has been forthcoming from the federal government to develop any new buildings, such as the proposed significant STEM building, which has vanished from their master plan and morphed into a few floors of the proposed development of the K&D site, and nor there is likely to be. Significantly, and I've perused all the documents, we've had no vote of this council to endorse the move to the city, and the abandonment of the Sandy Bay campus, except in obscure references that could mean anything. I can see the certain appeal of the move by the city planners and others to use this to achieve some of the current ideals of city planning: people-orientated, green, sustainable, accessible, and provide more housing. Goals I share, but it could be just a CBD illusion of a utopia without proper scrutiny. Evidence-based decision-making is required, and the need to be satisfied the developer will achieve the projects and goals of the city as promised, and the Sandy Bay campus is not abandoned for a lesser role, where indeed you could argue it already achieves those goals. I've used the last 2 weeks to talk to many in the community, including MPs. No one is expressing me support for the move. These people are not a ragged coalition of disgruntled people, as they are respected business people, teachers, academics, students and the general community. Firstly, I'd like to get a few things cleared up. A lot of nonsense is being spread around, that reviewing the Sandy Bay and CBD master plans and individual planning applications via the statutory processes will provide opportunities of extensive review and real consultation. This is clearly not correct and total nonsense. The statutory process of the rezoning of the Sandy Bay campus will not answer the fundamental question that the community will only be restricted in the limited ways in the statutory planning process. The fundamental question is whether or not the move is an overall positive for the City of Hobart, its residents and the broader community now and to the future. For example, the community will not be able to bring up concerns about the fates of various collections and equipment in the various tribunals, and even presenting evidence regarding the developments will cost the community a lot of money. The developer will employ all the planners and experts to argue their case and spend many hundreds of thousands of dollars of public money. So a Legislative Council Select Committee inquiry will attempt to answer and provide opportunities for all parties to have their say without incredible cost to the community. Questions: where's the evidence for the move? Is it a net gain to the finance of the university, the rate base of the city? Where is the evidence? Will this promote better education? Where is the evidence? Will it enable better, excellent research? Where is the evidence? Will it give international and local students the best education that Australia can offer in a safe environment?
For 30
will
seconds.
Improve the sadly depleted and low morale of the current university set
30
and
seconds,
have
Alderman
suffered
Briscoe.
cutbacks and their voices not heard or ignored? Will it give a boost to the CBD businesses, or totally the reverse, or the economy, or transport and parking? And to complete, I would have liked to go on for a few more minutes, but to conclude, personally I've been a long-time supporter of the Hobart as an education city, and I and many in the community value UTAS education, both as graduates and as postgraduates. I don't want to see the reputation of the university decline due to its real estate and developer goals.
That's time, Alderman Briscoe.
I'd like to ask a question.
Of course.
Thank you. About 2 questions. So I can't finish my speech, but it would last about another minute. The question, Lord Mayor, is where are the social and economic studies that were promised under the Memorandum of Understanding? Where are they? Have we done them? The social and economic studies at the effect of the move to the city. Have we done those studies? That's the first question.
Sorry. Alderman Briscoe, can you identify which council decision that was?
Yes, I can. It's a Memorandum of Understanding. The last memorandum of understanding between the university and Hobart, and I got it put in, that we would have, you should be aware of this, Lord Mayor.
I think it was before I was elected mayor.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Okay. You take credit. Where is the studies that was promised under the Memorandum of Understanding? Have we done it? The answer is yes or no. You can say yes or no.
I'll take it on notice.
Oh, will you? You won't ask the CEO?
Yes. I'll take it on notice.
Look, could I ask the question?
Lord Mayor.
Order. Please sit down, Alderman Briscoe, while we're getting the point of order.
Point of order. I find the tone and the way that Alderman Briscoe is framing this question, I know it's an emotional time and we all have a stake in this, but I feel that there is a lack of respect for the chair in the way that he's putting this. So I ask that that you rule on that point of order.
I'm not sure it's exactly a point of order, but I do ask that you take on board the Deputy's comments, please, Alderman Briscoe.
Yes, it is emotional, because I respect the university and I respect the city, and I've worked very hard for the last 8 years to make sure we have a great city. I am emotional about it. So the question that you've taken on notice, I'd like the CEO to answer, because the CEO may be in more knowledge than you are.
So the same question to me as to you. Would you like to take that on notice or answer it?
Through you, Lord Mayor, I am aware of the sorts of studies that you're talking about, and there were a number of them done, and some of those recently through you, Lord Mayor. But like you, I don't have the detail in front of me, and I will respond on notice. Having said that, though, we are going through a process of marrying up those commitments that were made in the MOU and the council decisions with the subsequent studies that have been undertaken, both in terms of the Central Hobart Precinct Plan, but also the Metro Plan, as well as the university's own work in relation to the master plan.
I appreciate that. And the final question, if I'm allowed, Lord Mayor, is what traffic and parking studies have been done by the City of Hobart to see the effect of implementing the massive move into the CBD? I'll go through you, Lord Mayor, to the General Manager, CEO, if I'm allowed.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And there have been a number of studies that have actually been undertaken within the Central Hobart area specifically over a number of years. So again, I can provide itemised details of those. More recently, though, we have done initial traffic analysis as part of the Central Hobart Precinct Plan. And in fact, that was one of the pieces of work that will be finalised as part of the draft precinct or structure plan going forward. Mobility and those transport connections are a key component of that analysis.
I wonder if I could clarify the question through you, Lord Mayor, the CEO. It was respect to the move, the implementation of the whole university, 20,000 students plus staff plus cars, the move. Have the city done a study of the effect of that move? A simple yes or no would be sufficient.
Through you, Lord Mayor. Well, I'm not sure it is in fact sufficient because there is some complexity to the question. Specifically, did we commission work historically regarding the move into the city? No, we did not, to my knowledge. However, there is a lot of detail that we still need to work through in terms of what has been done as part of that more recent transport strategy, but also some of the more detailed traffic and transport analysis as part of the commissioning work that we've done as part of the Central Hobart Precinct Plan.
I appreciate your frank answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Briscoe. So we've got Alderman Briscoe's motion. It's been seconded by, sorry, who was it seconded by? Councillor Coates, and I'm aware that there is another foreshadowed motion from Alderman Thomas as well that's been circulated as well. Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, I can understand the situation with...
Sorry, Alderman Zuko, do you want 5 minutes or...?
Oh yeah, give me 5 minutes, Lord Mayor. I think I'll be quicker. I can understand the situation with what's going on. I'm part of that team that Alderman Briscoe talked about. There is community concern. There's also support for the university move. I've done a fair bit of research myself with people that I know and other people, and mind you, I've got some very good associates that are actually members of a leftist political party who I talk to quite often, Lord Mayor, and I've got people in the Labor Party and people in the Liberal Party. It's quite extraordinary, the difference in opinion right across the board. But Lord Mayor, I think we should and have a right to at least be fully advised and understand what's going on. And I also believe that UTAS has a right to also ensure that it is proceeding down the track of community consultation. So, Lord Mayor, I actually have an amendment, and I'm not going to go through every specific part of Alderman Briscoe's motion because it actually reflects on point 1, it reflects on point 2, it reflects on point 3, and I've added a point 4, Lord Mayor. I'll ask Craig to put up the amendment. I've provided Craig with the amendment.
Have we got a physical copy?
If people want a physical copy, I've got a physical copy. You want to take one and just pass it round? Lord Mayor, I'll start by reading the amendment. Given that the level of public concern that has been raised with elected members of the Hobart City Council, and given the final decision will be made by the Tasmanian Planning Commission, that the Council write to all members... Lord Mayor, as per every one of these points, I'm moving them separately So each and every elected member can vote on them separately. So if they feel that they can vote for one or not the other, that's the way I'm actually appointing them. So this amendment is that these are taken separately, right? So that the council write to all members of the upper house to consider a select committee to inquire and determine whether or not UTAS move to the CBD and the conversation of the current Sandy Bay campus into a mixed use zone. Is that to the benefit or otherwise of the residents, businesses, students and general community of Greater Hobart and Tasmania? 2, that a report be provided to address the following. The following is the points that Alderman Briscoe has raised in his point 2. I'm just asking that we get a report on that. To me, that provides us as elected members more information in our determination in regards to this. And point 3, council right to UTAS, seeking that UTAS immediately initiate and undertake a community engagement process similar to the council's community engagement framework and policy regarding the UTAS move into the CBD and the conversation of the current Sandy Bay campus. And point 4, and this to my point of view is very important, Lord Mayor, we do have a petition. It is going to committee, I understand, but I would like to ensure and see that recent petition seeking a public meeting is dealt with a matter of urgency. That way there we can get on with it, and we can get on with that component of it. Lord Mayor, the amendments actually take out quite a number of components that Alderman Briscoe is stating in respect of a potential elector poll. I'll just let everybody know, those that don't know, I am absolutely and have always been against elector polls, whether they are conducted during an election or whether they are conducted any other time. I find them, sometimes they could be used for political means, and they are an absolute cost to the ratepayers, and I don't support that. That's hensing why I'm changing that point. Lord Mayor,
30 seconds, Alderman.
I'm moving that as an amendment, and I'm going to sit down.
With the permission of my seconder, I think I will include this in as part of my motion. I think just reading through it, it doesn't change the intention of my motion. It actually improves it. So I'm happy if Alderman Zuko believes that I will. Well, it's part redraft. It's just a rewording. So I'll accept it in it provided my seconder, Councillor Coates.
If Alderman Briscoe is happy to accept that in as an amendment, I'm happy for that, and I'll withdraw my amendment. You can accept it in.
Replacement.
Well, it's a rewording of some of the clauses.
I think you have to withdraw your motion.
No, I'm not going to withdraw my motion. This is a rewriting some clumsy language that I've used by better language, and I'm happy to include that in my motion. So, and I think the seconder, if he agrees to that, he would probably agree that it's a better outcome.
Look, for your benefit, Chair, having just read this now, also just been given this document now, look, I don't see on top of it any problems. I note that when moving it, you said you wanted to go piece by piece. I'm not sure about one, but yeah, look, given the mover's happy with it, I'm happy with it.
Thank you very much.
Point of clarification, Lord Mayor.
Sorry, Alderman.
Point of clarification, Lord Mayor. Okay. As I explained from the start, I've actually looked at Alderman Briscoe's 1, 2 and 3, right? Number 1, he's saying that determine how an independent inquiry, right? Okay? Yeah. I'm amending that to my number 1. So I'm going to go through each individual one. So that's my amendment to that particular, change it completely to what I am proposing. Number 2, Alderman Briscoe is stating The report should suggest scope for the terms of reference, such an inquiry, these terms of reference. I am saying that a report be provided to address the following rather than terms of reference. So I'm sorry, Lord Mayor, all due respect to our professionals, I have very carefully looked at this motion and I very carefully looked at each and every component of Alderman Briscoe's motion, and I have gone one to one, okay? That the report seek how the inquiry should seek public submissions. For that, I believe that we should amend it to council right to UTAS. I've added point 4. The only addition is point 4. You know, Lord Mayor, I'm not going to state the obvious. I've been around this table 30 years. I've been very carefully working on this motion and very carefully working across. Okay. So it is an amendment to the words that have been used.
And I've accepted it, and
okay.
The seconder has as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's my motion.
I understand, Councillor Briscoe. And,
not a recommendation from a committee.
Yep.
And so we now have a new motion.
No, we haven't. We have the same motion.
Amended motion.
Amended motion.
Well, it hasn't been voted on by amendment. It's been accepted. It's been accepted by the. Yeah, it's not. It's now the. It's now the motion. It is now the motion before us.
Thank you. It's not a new motion. It is the.
Okay, so we have this motion now. The motion. So we've same mover, same seconder.
No, it's the same motion.
Same mover, same seconder.
It's the same motion.
Alderman Briscoe's motion now. Thank you.
Yeah, motion not as amended, but motion as modified. Yeah.
Yes,
okay, so now would somebody like to speak to this motion? Anyone like to speak to the motion?
Okay. Well, Mayor, look, firstly, I'd just like to say that motions on the run like this are really terrible motions. They normally try to, I don't know, you don't know where they're going and what they're trying to achieve. So I would have much preferred that if this had have been discussed ahead of time between the two motion writers, so that they actually had their I's and T's crossed so they knew what each other was doing. So sharing a bit of information would have been very helpful. Geez, where to start? So what we're talking about here, let's start with a zoning change in Sandy Bay. Well, also the decision to come to the city. That was a decision made by the University Council. It wasn't a decision made by us. It was a decision made by the University Council, and we administer the regulations. So the two things that I'm concerned about is circumventing those statutory requirements. There's a defined process that we should be working towards. But I'll just step back one little space before I continue, and that's the reasons for the shift in the university approach to education. I went through uni in the 80s. I'm also an alumni of UTAS in 2000, and I worked there for a few years as well. And when I went to university, this was my technology. I had a pen and paper, and it was terrible because I couldn't read my own handwriting. And if you didn't attend a lecture, you had to borrow notes from a friend if they were prepared to give it to you. So it was I found it a real struggle in the 80s going to university as compared to when I went to the university in the year 2000 where I had a computer. So today, students don't use pen and paper, they use all sorts of technology, iPhones, iPads, whatever it is. They also don't necessarily attend lectures because they can have lectures on demand. All lectures are recorded. You can either watch it live, you can attend, or you can watch it in your own time after. So the nature of study has changed considerably in that time from when we had free education in the 80s through to now, when education is completely different, approached in a completely different manner. And the university, of course, recognises that. So the council decision was they wanted to shift to the city and to look at the rezoning of the Sandy Bay campus. Both of these things go through statutory processes. The zoning scheme amendment will cover off on a lot of things that the movers of this motion have talked about when it comes to reporting back. And if I can just read through the list of things, and I'm assuming that this is accurate. page 97. So the proposed amendment is supported by a master plan and accompanying assessments, including...
Page 90 of what, sorry?
Page 97.
Of what?
Of your motion. It's the
right.
council response. So the proposed amendment is supported by a master plan and accompanying assessment, including strategic planning report prepared by ERA planning consultants, community engagement summary, conservation management plan, heritage impact assessment, economic market demand assessment, economic impact assessment, natural values ecological assessment and impact assessment, traffic impact assessment, landscape and township visual impact assessment, Aboriginal heritage assessment, transport strategy, civil engineering report, contamination report, and a number of other requests for information that the City of Hobart has put to the UTAS. So that's the process. Then that goes on to be assessed, and I'll just keep reading. Council officers, an independent planning consultant and other consultants have reviewed the application and supporting information and have sought further information, which UTAS are currently addressing. Once the further information is submitted, a comprehensive report will be provided to the council acting as a planning authority for a decision whether or not to initiate an amendment to the planning scheme. If initiated, the amendment will be publicly exhibited and any person can make a representation, which is then considered again by the council. An independent review, relatively broad-ranging with regard to planning matters, will be made by the Tasmanian Planning Commission and must include a hearing if there are representations. The hearing provides the opportunity for anyone who has made a representation to make a written and verbal submission. Such a process provides an independent inquiry into many of the matters of concern to the community. So, Lord Mayor, that is the process, and I'm quite comfortable with that process. Can I have an extra minute? 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
By Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Alderman Briscoe. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously.
Lord Mayor, the University Council also made a decision, well, probably a long time ago, that they were looking at moving into the city. And that's been ongoing since. And I first was aware of this back in 2007 when Darryl LeGroux was the Vice-Chancellor of the university and was talking about, I think he referred to it as the pearls of wisdom through the city. Roll forward 3 more years and we also, a string of pearls, was it? Yeah, string of pearls. Roll forward to 2010 and we had a really incredible process in Hobart with Jan Gell from Denmark, and he created a strategy for the City of Hobart called A Place with People in Mind. And one of the recommendations in that was for Hobart to become a university city. Now that plan was contested as well, but it wasn't necessarily contested on the fact of the university coming to town, but it was contested by a whole lot of people because this was going to be the death of Hobart. You know, it was going to destroy the nature of the city. That Yarngale plan's now been almost done and dusted. Most of the recommendations have now been completed from the Yarngale plan, and including the opportunity, well, the university moving into the city across a number of sites. And I'll pick up on one thing that was said in the paper today, which I found to be, quite a misstatement, and that was about the Elizabeth Street accommodation. Now, let's just go back a while, back to the period where that building in Elizabeth Street didn't exist. There was criticism of that building and the ground floor. Back in probably 2010 or so, that was a car park. It was a gravel car park that hosted about 80 cars. On that car park now live 400 students that work in the cafes and restaurants in Hobart. They study in Hobart, they work in Hobart, they live in Hobart, they contribute to the economy of Hobart. And there's about 150 car parks in that building now. So we actually ended up with more car parks, I'm not sure the exact number, more car parks in that building than the dusty car park we had there. So to criticise that building, maybe the front ground floor needs work and that'll happen in the future. However, to diss that building was totally inappropriate because that's been very successful in accommodating people in the city.
Alderman Harvey, Councillor Harvey. Further discussion? Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, this is a difficult one. It's one that I'm sure we've all been lobbied on hard and had people come to us from both sides of this. And I am a bit torn because I think there are some merits to the UTAS move, but I do also have a lot of real concerns, and there are some real concerns within the community for it. I'll just start with, I think there is a main issue to me that up until recently, I think the university hasn't done even up until recently, I think the university hasn't done a fantastic job of communicating what actually its plans are to the people of Hobart, to us as elected members. I think it was only very recently that there was even an explanation of what the actual benefits to educational outcomes for students are, which, when we're sitting here as elected members and we don't know what they are, what hope can you have that the members of the public would have a proper understanding of what the university is trying to accomplish here? And they do have some justifications for it, but I think it's been very, very late in the piece that we're actually being told this. So the result is you have concerned members of the community having to put together what's going on, and I think it's led to, I think the poor consultation has led to or exacerbated the situation that we have right now. Look, I support the majority of this motion. I do have, as I said, I am supportive of parts of it. I have some serious concerns about parts of it. Mostly, depending on how this is done, if it was to go ahead, what the impacts would be on the CBD for traffic access. I do note that we had our report card, or the community survey the council got recently, that said congestion and parking availability was the biggest issue that members of the community had with the city, and that's a real concern. So look, these are issues that we need to take seriously, but so I do support the majority of the motion apart from part one, only because I'm not sure that an inquiry, especially a parliamentary inquiry, is the right way to go about addressing this. I think what it takes, and Councillor Coates might be able to provide some more wisdom on this, but I think it's about a year for a parliamentary inquiry to sit and then report back. We do have active applications soon to come to council, and not only that, and I think this actually is a broader issue, not just with this particular issue with the university, but the broader issue around universities is that they don't actually answer to anybody in government. There's a board appointment on the university council, but they don't answer to any minister. They don't we can give them we can tell them what we think, or a parliamentary inquiry could say that yes, the UTAS move is a wonderful, fantastic thing, or they might say it's terrible, it's going to be a huge detriment to the city, and that won't give anybody the power to direct the university to do anything. They, for all intents and purposes, from the council's perspective, they are a private organisation putting forward a planning application. So we can be as critical of their consultation on this and as critical of what they're trying to do as we can. But at the end of the day, we are still going to have to sit here with our statutory planning authority hats on. We'll have an application for the Sandy Bay rezoning, and then consequent applications that come out of that, and then we'll have an application for what goes on in the CBD with those individual applications. And I suppose my question, I do have a question out of this, Lord Mayor, but so through you to the acting director, would such an inquiry running parallel to planning applications that are active at the moment or impending at the moment, does that place us in a sort of conflicted position, or does that preempt our position in the planning process in any way? Because that's something that I'm just kind of not 100% on.
Through you, Chair, no, at all times elected members would be expected to act independently as a planning authority, and I see no reason why the elected members would not be able to do that if this other inquiry was being carried out. And
just as another question, assuming that I am right, and I could very well be wrong, but a parliamentary inquiry or an independent inquiry takes about a year to be set up and then report back to us. Given the timelines of current applications, we will have had to have made a decision on those by then, would we not?
Through you, Chair, absolutely. We have one which I'm expecting for the forestry building, which I'm expecting will come to the committee on the 26th of April.
Look, so Lord Mayor, look, I do have some serious concerns. I don't think that a parliamentary inquiry is the way to go about this, but I hope that that doesn't detract from the concerns that are in the community. I think we need to find the right way to address them. And I think making it clear that we have a higher expectation of the university to engage, not with us, but not just with us, but with the community, and explain to the community what it is that they're doing and why, but also listen to the community as well. I think the majority of this motion does that, and I think the report that we'll be looking at getting back will answer a lot of those questions that we need asked, even if a lot of these questions are already being addressed in reports. And I would expect that you know, the applications that are going into the city will have traffic impact reports and parking impact reports, and many if not all of those, but many of those things that we're already asking for. My sort of issue is, and it's something that I'm quite frustrated in.
No, that's nearly time.
Can I get another 2 minutes?
Moved by Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Councillor Dudder. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously.
Thank you. Look, yeah, my great frustration with all of this is that we have an organisation that's effectively publicly funded that acts like a private organisation. So we have an expectation that they're going to behave, consult in a similar way to how a government entity would, but they're not. And unfortunately, I feel like I'm stuck in. I feel like myself and everybody here, by extension, is stuck in a position where we're making a purely planning assessment on an issue that has much broader implications. And I think it's not something I'm comfortable doing, but I feel like that's the situation that we are in. That is why I won't support the inquiry. However, I would say that, and also agreeing with what Alderman Briscoe said, I wouldn't be happy with us pursuing an elector poll, but I do think this is a big enough issue that, given that we have to anyway, but we're advancing the request of this petition urgently. I think this is an issue of broad concern in the community. I think for very good reason. The university campus has been a sort of mainstay of Hobart, and the impacts that this is going to have on the CBD potentially are quite wide-ranging. So I think it's important that we get it right. I think the university could have done better up to date. I don't think that's necessarily a reason to pull up stumps on everything and stop everything, but we do need to ensure that we have good outcomes for the city here, as much as we have within our power to do that. And I think that's what the issue is here. I'm not convinced that we do have enough power here as a council to maintain the control of this that we'd like to.
You've got 10 seconds.
I'll wrap up there.
Okay. Alderman Thomas.
Thanks, Lord Mayor, and I probably will need another couple of minutes, so we'll do that at the end. First of all, I'd like to thank Alderman Briscoe for his motion. He's always a hard worker for his city, my colleague on my left. For me, the issue, though, is one of capacity and authority to act. And I want to make a really important comment here that I believe that under the legislation, and that's what guides this council and it's what guides the university, the legislation gives the University Council both the capacity and the authority to act. It may not be the emotional outcome that people want, but it's the legal outcome. This is the second time that the University of Tasmania has sought to change the centre of its operation. The first began with planning in 1920 and finished in 1961. We have a completely different situation now than that which existed in the first move from the city to Sandy Bay. Although the reasons for the university wanting to move back to the city are the very same reasons, or very similar, to those advocated by this council for the university to stay in the city and not move to Sandy Bay. And I do recall one of our recent general managers saying, Damon, don't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Now, we are now 40 years past when we advocated for the university to stay here, and it looks like it may well get to this point. The circumstances in which the decision-making processes have occurred this time is radically different from those of the earlier move. I suggest that by seeking a report into ways in which this council or others could contribute to an independent inquiry into the planned relocation of this university to the Hobart CBD, we would potentially be stumbling into an area in a way that the current legislative and commercial framework for our university does not recognise and is unhelpful. Please permit me a little reflection to illustrate this point. When the move originally occurred over that 40-year time span, the university was much subject to government engagement and involvement, including likely oversight. Whilst the University Council then and now has, since its inception, a very strong legislative mandate to govern the university, in those days prior to the Dawkins White Paper, it relied on government funding for such a major relocation, and consequently in that earlier move it felt somewhat subservient to prevailing government opinion. That has changed. The circumstances, however, do not seem to have changed from earlier days when much community consultation and discussion raged over where the university would be located in the future. Indeed, from 1920 to 1959 there was a concentrated period of uncertainty. In the 1920s, when the Domain campus was considered too small, Newtown was looked at. In 1929 there was a period of great agitation by Sandy Bay residents against the rifle range, and the university turned its attention to that site as a possible alternative to Newtown. During this time the City Council wanted to acquire the rifle range site to turn it into a public reserve, but by 1939 the City Council had lost interest because of the cost of the acquisition from the Commonwealth. At this time the City Council and the Lord Mayor John Soundy supported the proposal to use the rifle range for the university and the public reserve. However, by 1948 the Hobart City Council, the group in which we are now comprised, through the Town Clerk H.J.R. Cole, presented a strong case to the Public Works Parliamentary Committee for an expanded domain site, arguing that in town planning terms the open spaces in Hobart were unbalanced, whilst recreational space and Sandy Bay were limited. Students too at the time, as is reported now, favoured the central city as opposed to Sandy Bay. The council of the time spoke of the domain site as providing a far more solid foundation than the rifle range, which had a reputation of being faulty land. A parliamentary standing committee on public works was heavily involved in the planning of the new Sandy Bay campus. A royal commission in 1955, voted by the House of Assembly, singled out for criticism the failure of the University Council to make active and repeated efforts to hasten the work. The university at that council assumed a subordinate position to the Public Works Department and did not insist on its due rights as a governing body of an autonomous institution, from then to now. There is of course still specific oversight of educational standards and borrowings by various Commonwealth and state authorities, and the Minister for Education, as but by way of example, nominates 2 people to sit on the University Council.
Thomas, that's time. Would you like some extra time?
Thank you, Alderman Briscoe. I'll seek 3 minutes.
So 3 minutes all from first moved by Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously.
Thank you. The university today is a sizable operation. Unlike earlier times, it is not spending significant government money comparative to its own fund, and therefore has a much stronger sense of its responsibilities in terms of investment and operations. It is not government funded. The current decision has not been lightly made and extends back through a period of 3 Vice-Chancellors and a decade. I understand that there may well exist a full record of decision making during the period of the transformation, and the University Council has been steadfast in its support for the Southern transformation. With $500 million invested in the move to the city, there's been a consistent and evidenced move, and recognising that there has been a consistent and evidenced move by our Parliament to invest in bodies such as the university the autonomy to operate in a specialist field in which it is recognised, namely that of higher education. The university speaks of staff and community consultations involving 23 workshops with academic and professional staff, over 1,100 staff and students attending an active installation room, and over 400 surveys and direct feedback from staff and students. It has turned out the one thing that is consistent again, that the Hobart population is concentrated in the northern suburbs, and the city is considered by the University Council, as we did 40 years ago, as a more central site. Under the University of Tasmania Act, the the University Council has the total responsibility for high-level strategic direction, major financial planning, monitoring management performance and compliance, staff appointments and the allocation of funds. The governance framework requires the university to meet higher education standards, and it does receive funding for education research and related activities, but other than the specific grant application, it is otherwise dependent. We should be very wary of supporting or advocating the involvement of an independent third party who has not been privy to a decade of information gathering and decision making, nor is alert to the financial consequences and the educational outcomes that are embedded in the unanimous decision of successive university councils. The University Council, every councillor is required to act in terms of good faith and in terms of their business decisions, and they are required to have no material interest in the outcome, and they are required to inform themselves fully on a subject matter. What would happen if we did investigate an independent inquiry? The government's already advised this council that it has no intention of commencing an independent inquiry of the institution. With a majority in the lower house, there is no likelihood that even if the opposition were minded, that there would be an independent inquiry established. In the event that the government, which has clearly shown it's not supportive, was to reconsider its position, then it would likely need to be given evidence, at least on the balance of probabilities, I don't think we'll use that up. No Royal Commission. We legally and with full accountability, the University Council has done everything it could, and yes, it should do some more consultation, but that's it. It has the power.
Okay.
I only got to 2010 with mine.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a few questions, please. Question number one through you, Chair, is what percentage of the land area in the CBD is owned by UTAS? That's question number one.
CEO, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, and through you, Lord Mayor, to Councillor Dutta. You may recall that this was actually prepared as a table in the Central Hobart Precinct Plan discussion paper, and currently the land holdings, as it relates to the Central Hobart, so the study area, is 2.7%. So they're the UTAS land holdings in the study area, and it is available on the website through you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. The second question is, the CEO, please clarify if the matters raised in this motion will be investigated in the Central Hobart Precinct Plan, and if it is, will it be a repetition?
Through you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dutta. The answer is somewhat, yes. There are a number of issues that would be covered off in the Central Hobart Precinct Plan, but I also think there's a number of matters raised that do pertain to particular planning matters as well, as has been discussed earlier, certainly in regard to development applications, both within Central Hobart, but also the planning scheme amendment and the process for council consideration of that. So it's really those key three things that would certainly inform decision making going forward, where we would require that level of study and analysis prior to recommending a position to council.
Thank you. And just a final question, Chair, through you. Having come in late into the council, I just want again clarification with regards to as to when this historically started. And then the question is, could you please clarify as to why the Hobart City Council undertook two major study tours? When did this tour take place, and how much did it cost the ratepayers? What was the whole rationale behind this?
Through you, Lord Mayor, if I may just, respond by saying that that is detailed in the administration response in the report. So it talks about the years that those trips took place and provided a bit of a background for that. To get into more detail, Lord Mayor, I wouldn't be able to. I wasn't here at the time, but as it is reported in the officer administration advice in response to the notice of motion, it was clear when those tours took place, and there are reports available as well on Council's website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lord Mayor, may I just ask for an extension, please, before I begin, of 3 minutes?
So that's moved by Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. So that's 8 minutes, is it, Councillor Dutty, you're looking for?
Thank you, Chair. I want to begin by making some introductory comments. And first of all, I have received a number of emails, and they're very strongly worded and at times emotive. And I suppose most of us have received them, unless I was singled out.
No, you weren't.
No, you weren't.
I was, in fact, in my communication, told to go back to Fiji.
God, appalling.
In my communication, I was told that, how long have you been here? Which university did you go to? Now, I find this not very pleasant, but that's okay. In the political arena, I am quite used to things like this, and I no doubt many others. Now, my family, in fact, my brother-in-law came here under a Colombo plan in the 1960s to study at the university. My family is divided with regards to this matter, and all four of us went to the university here in Tasmania. Our family is divided because there are few of them who have nostalgic reasons for it not to move. And for me, I've got to respect that, but that doesn't help me in my decision making. I have come across people who have disputed this, who have debated this, and have discussed this. And like Alderman Thomas, I want to congratulate and commend Alderman Briscoe for bringing this up. There is a anger, there is a community concern, and I support that totally and wholeheartedly, and we must listen to them. It is their democratic right to do that, and we must not say we are not interested in this. So I'm very happy to look at this. The point I want to make here is this, that as far as the motion is concerned, there are three parts to it. But the first part, due to time, I'm just going to refer to the first part of it, and it states that the consultation, the sites and decision and reports that both UTES and the City Council have taken to date. Now, the operative term here is consultation. And the many emails that I've received and the people who have communicated to me, the common thread has been consultation, that there has been no consultation. Now, in my own research and study, wanting to find information, I found that there has been consultation. There has been a consultation started in 2019. There was a summit held. And then in 2021, in June, there was a consultation spaces opened at the Sandy Bay campus. There were special interest groups who were invited. The Sandy Bay residents and others were invited to the bowling club. And there's about 21,000 letters were sent to people with regards to this particular matter in the Sandy Bay area and South Hobart area. Now, the consultation also took place with the council, because there is a inner city action plan, there is a visions document, there's a council strategic plan, and there are a number of other things. And Alderman Briscoe also mentioned our involvement as the Lord Mayor is in that whole consultation process. So there has been consultation at that level. I also did my own research, like Alderman Zuko. I usually do this. And I found, to my amazement, when I spoke to people, that there are 20 private colleges in the city. And I was flabbergasted. 24, I'm told. I thought it was 20. Now, if each college has 300 students, there are 6,000 students. If you say there are 20. There are about 4,000 plus students, international students. And the people that I've spoken to, I have a number of students who work for me. There are others that I've spoken to, the international students, they don't feel comfortable. Most of them can't afford to live in Sandy Bay. They live in the other suburbs. They have difficulty with travel. And so there are reasons where these international students feel much more comfortable. There is support, there is consultation. And so for me, I think it is an important point to take on board, because the university is no longer the university it used to be 20, 30 years ago. This city, when I came here 38 years ago, is totally different. Even if you go to the city now, things are so different. And therefore, changes have taken place, and we've got to be open to these changes. And I quite like the motion presented by Alderman Zuko. And I think there are good points, except for number 2. I think I would be quite happy to support all the parts that is there, and I think it is merit at it. And finally, may I conclude by saying this, that I hope that this will not become a battle of narratives, which will be a sad thing. There is a division, people will take different sides, but if we form this into a battle of narratives, it will be sad. My guru once said to me, Mike, you don't have the truth, neither do I have the truth. Let us work together to find the truth. And I hope that we'll find a middle ground. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Councillor Coates.
Look, thank you, Chair. I won't seek an extension of time. I'll try and keep my comments brief. Look, first of all, just to be very clear, so the university reached out to me for a meeting as a consultation, and I'm sure they reached out to others, and what I'm about to say is exactly what I told them. And they said to me, they said, look, you know, you're an elected member, you're connected to the community, what's your feeling, what's your thoughts about the move? And I said to them, what I believe from doing my research and talking to members of the community is that there is a lot of disquiet. And there is a lot of questions that they feel have not been answered appropriately. And in some cases, in some quarters, there is a bit of anger in regards to the move out of Sandy Bay. And look, and I gave them that honest feedback, and I said, look, in my view, and in talking to the community members, the UTAS campus needs to continue starting at Earl Street. At the moment, it obviously ends at Alexander Street. Look, but I think most people could see the rationale for university activity taking place in the city, and obviously a lot of it already has, but there was definitely a strong feeling that what they have in Sandy Bay is of value, and it could be of value going forward for the university, and obviously for the students and the community in Sandy Bay. So, look, I gave that feedback to them, I've said it publicly, and I'm saying it again here now. So look, when Alderman Briscoe presented his original motion to me, I said, well, look, as far as I read it, there's nothing in there that I think is us sort of overstepping the mark. I appreciate there is a process, and the university also has every right to put forward their plans and to go down their own path. But so I said to him, look, I'm comfortable seconding that motion, and I do feel that given the level of community interest in this, there is a role for us as the local government to play as representatives of the community. Now, look, just very quickly looking at the one here and keeping in mind the comments in regards to the time frame, I'm not sure that the number 1 on the new one is necessarily as good as what we had or the best path to go down. You know, I think number 2 just sort of covers it and leave it up to the executive officers to determine the best way. Ultimately, I think Parliament is their own beast, and they can initiate what they like without input from us. I would also note it would be potentially interesting to ask members in the Tasmanian Parliament, where relatively few actually have constituencies that cross over with the UTAS either Sandy Bay or City. So look, that said, I think what's been put before us ultimately, yes, it attracts a lot of emotions, but it is a reasonably sensible motion, and I think it's something that the executive officers would be able to fulfil, and, you know, along with their statutory planning process as well. So, look, I don't intend to really go on for much longer, but when UTAS asked my view, I gave it to them, and I gave it to them having spoken to and interacted with and engaged with members of the community. We've all obviously seen the community group that's sort of sprung up, and I think that is genuine. I think that is based on, you know, people who have a great passion and a great love for their university and want to make sure that ultimately mistakes aren't made. And look, it will be a messy process, I'm sure, but, you know, I think all of us can agree that University of Tasmania for the city of Hobart and for Tasmania in general is such an important piece of our social fabric and infrastructure, but none of us want to stuff this up. The uni don't want to stuff this up, we don't want to stuff this up, the community sure as hell don't want this stuffed up. So look, you know, it might be overanalyzed 100 times, but if that's what it takes to get the best outcome, so be it. Look, I would urge you to support the motion.
Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I thank the elected members for the discussion to date. I think it's starting to become a fairly rational discussion over time of this motion that Alderman Briscoe has put.
Oh no, Lord Mayor, it's my motion.
My motion.
It's my motion,
right.
And if the deputy doesn't, a point of order. Point of order.
Yes, what's your point
So
of order?
the deputy has to sit down for a point of order.
Shall I sit down,
Yes,
Lord
thank
Mayor?
you. Yeah, thank you.
Sit down? Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, because I think she
What's
asked me
the
to sit
order?
down. The point of order is that it's misinterpreting that it is, in fact, Alderman Briscoe's motion. It's my motion. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, if I may. Oh, sorry.
It's Alderman Briscoe's motion, isn't it?
If you can just clarify that, please.
Wonderful.
Lord. No, I think we're okay.
Okay, sorry.
Clarification, please.
Okay, if you must, yep.
All I've done is move an amendment, Lord Mayor. It's not my motion.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Right, thank you. So, I apologise, it's obviously Alderman Briscoe's motion that we didn't discuss last council meeting, but we're discussing now. So I'm glad that we've got to that point. We've been able to discuss Alderman Briscoe's motion. So, I think there have been some fantastic points of view put here, and I know full well through some of the correspondence that I've received, as we all have received, that this is high in the list of concerns. You know, the university's move into the city and from the Sandy Bay campus for many people. I really feel for Councillor Dutta in what sounds quite a racist approach to an elected member, and that should never be. And we should remember to maintain dignity in this. I think it's Harmony Week, but dignity not only for elected members, but for everybody around the table. And I know full well that it is a huge consideration when you think about the university moving from a bush campus, purpose-built bush campus from the 50s, I think, and you know, all the benefits there, the move into the city, the change of the city that occurs with more students into the city, so a younger cohort quite often, but all of the things that changes the face of the city, and to me that increases the vibrancy of an inner city. You might remember, I'm not sure if you were on council, Lord Mayor, but when we had the Maya fire, I think that was 2007 maybe. It was we as a council, not all of us, I certainly didn't support this position, but we were looking for a major tenant in the city, and for Maya to be rebuilt at the site it is now. And so it was a really big concern that there was enough interest and a large tenant coming into the city. So that was supported through our major projects fund, and we spent millions, I think, probably, or hundreds of thousands anyway, a lot of money on trying to attract a major tenant. We have a major player coming into the city with the university's proposal. And I might add, contrary to an email that was sent to all elected members today, I have had no prior knowledge in relation to the university's proposal and coming into the city. You might agree with that,
I don't
Briscoe?
know. If you tell me you haven't, I'll agree. I'll accept that.
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, not having prior information but being accused of meeting with prior knowledge as to what the university is doing with the Sandy Bay campus, then, you know, like it's been a pretty untidy discussion from both sides, I might add. And there has been quite a lot of circular arguments. You know, we've met, I met when I was acting Lord Mayor.
It's nearly 5 minutes. Do you want an extension?
I didn't want an extension, but I'll have to ask for 3 minutes.
Moved by Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Alderman Briscoe. All those in favour say aye. Against say no, carried unanimously.
So there have been quite a lot of time spent meeting with members of the Sandy Bay campus and individuals, and quite often the discussion is a very circular argument. I might put a position, but it circles back. Well, no, this is what we think. This is what we think. That's fine, but it doesn't really help things in the long run if you can't listen to both sides of the story. We've also been accused of doing the university's bidding, and I find that fairly offensive, I must say. Now, Lord Mayor, we do have a petition before us, and we know full well that petition, which was brought to us by Professor Pam Sharp, will be coming back to us. So I think a lot of what the motion that is before us, the amended motion that's before us, is actually represented not only in that petition but also in the numerous reports that we've had and are expecting. So I find that whilst there has been a nuancing of the original motion, I find that it's almost superfluous, as Alderman Thomas has said. It steps out of our realm of influence and responsibility, and I think we're often accused of doing that, like stepping out of our realm and our areas of responsibility as a council, and I cannot support this motion as it is.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Oh, Alderman Sexton, would you like to say anything? Alderman Sexton?
Sorry, Lord, I was struggling with the technology. Look, I'm going to make just a very brief comment. I believe that the reason that this motion is a good thing isn't because it's a planning issue, because obviously, as has been pointed out by other members of other elected members, there is a planning process which we must go through, and which will cover a lot of these issues. But the bottom line is that we are also community representatives as well as act as a planning authority. And we all know that the community is split on this. There's a sign directly across from my house, in fact I can see it now out the window, saying support UTAS. Clearly a member of the UTAS alumni across the road from me it feels strongly enough about it to have a sign on the problem. And we've all seen those signs. So the bottom line here, in my opinion, is that there is more to this from a community perspective than just the planning issues. And when we are acting as a planning authority, of course, we must stick strictly to the planning authority role. But tonight we are acting more as community representatives in dealing with this issue. So from that perspective, I understand the reason for this, and I also support a number of elements of it. I don't support all of them. The items I don't, for example, think that it's going to give any benefit at all to refer that to parliamentary committee hearing, because it's already been noted that that's going to take a long time and is probably not going to be accepted anyway. There are things that we can do as a council to gather some information and to distribute that information and be part of the consultation process. So from that perspective, I'm happy enough with the recommendations as amended. I also do want to say that the University of Tasmania gave me a life-changing opportunity. It allowed me to do medicine down here, allowed me to go and do a PhD. For a period of time I worked as an associate professor in medicine at the University of Tasmania. So I've had a lot of experience at the University of Tasmania, particularly that campus. And in my opinion, that campus was one of the points of difference between capital city universities. Having attended the University of Melbourne, which is the CBD campus, with very little ground, coming down here and feeling the sun on my back and smelling the eucalyptus was a transformational process for me as a student. Now, it may well be that it's past its use by date. It may well be that students don't get that experience anymore because they don't go to the sites. And it may well be that there are changes that are required. But I don't think it's unreasonable that we investigate a number of the issues that have been raised by members of the public and try to understand in more detail exactly what is being proposed and what may well be the outcomes, both the advantages and the disadvantages of the new proposed by the university. So from that perspective, I'm happy enough to support the majority of Alderman Briscoe's motion as amended. Thanks.
Any further discussion? No, I might say a few words. I'd like to start just by asking the CEO just on point 2, the report. How do you have any advice about whether you think this report would be reasonably like how major would it be to pull this material together? Is a lot of this already around and it's a matter of collating, or does it require a lot of in-depth additional work?
Through you, Lord Mayor, as per the officer advice in here, I mean, there is work that would be required that would be additional to what's already being undertaken. As I said, most of the reports required have already been commissioned as part of the Central Hobart Precincts Plan, as well as the work that would be required as part of the planning scheme amendment consideration and the detailed planning reports associated with that. Similarly, at a sort of higher level as far as the Metro Plan goes. But I do think, and I've raised concern in the administration response, that I do think this adds to, you know, the complexity, and I think that these are matters that, you know, really have been addressed as part of those other strategic planning items at a higher level and will continue to be, and also subject to community engagement and consultation as well, Lord Mayor.
Yeah, look, I've really found the discussion really pretty productive, and it's good for us to have a discussion about this, because obviously it is a very key issue for the community at the moment. You know, I do recognise that there are a whole range of processes going on. I'm conscious that the Greater Hobart Metro Plan is going to probably come out within a few weeks or months, and that will be very much the big picture about what we're expecting in terms of population projections for Greater Hobart, and making some going out to the community for their feedback about settlement patterns, where we put extra dwellings, you know, whether they're on the outskirts, whether they're in the city, how we'll deal with infrastructure and transport needs with that growth of potentially 60,000 more residents in Greater Hobart by 2050 in 30 years' time. So I think some of the issues that have got caught up with this particular project are actually even bigger issues for the city, because this is, you know, one player, but potentially there's going to be a lot of individuals and new operations basing themselves in Hobart, and we have to discuss and manage this. And in my view, in some ways, we shouldn't, you know, the Metro Plan probably needs to come first. It needs to be the first thing that the community has a conversation about, and that all of the councils approve. And in my mind, that would be the most logical way to think about not just this particular project, but a whole range of other issues around growth and management of the city. Now, that said, you know, I understand people are very concerned. I think the Sandy Bay housing plan, housing and other elements plan, was a shock to people. It wasn't really very well known by the elected members either before it went out. It was something very new, and I think people were shocked, and they hadn't really realised some of the issues or the ideas that were being talked about for the Sandy Bay campus. I agree with people's concern and acknowledgement that the communication around this whole project has been a bit fraught, or quite fraught, and I think that's a whole range of reasons. It's partly very well be partly the university's ability to communicate this, but also the fact that this has gone over numerous years and it's been extended out. I think there was quite a deep process they undertook in about 2019, but I think that was very internal. So for a whole range of reasons, there's a lot of concern and angst and misunderstanding and lack of information. People don't feel they've got sufficient information. I understand that. I won't support number 1 because I think that is, I'm not sure that I agree that the Upper House is the appropriate organisation. I do think that our planning processes, the Tasmanian Planning Commission, and also these strategic planning processes like the Metro Plan, but also the CBD Precinct Plan, will have to unpack a lot of these issues and provide, and we'll have to make decisions and consult with the community. I'm actually reasonably open to the other 3 items. I think we're going to be having the petition and a public meeting. As the Deputy said, it is happening, and we've got a statutory timeframe, but there's no problem with acknowledging that we've got the meeting. I think the council writing to UTAS and asking it to do more consultation is also something I support, because I think it's clear that there is definitely a need for there to be more consultation and discussion with the community, and I don't have any objections to us being on the record asking UTAS to do that. I've got concerns with a couple of the items in the report because I'm not sure we've got enough information. Probably number 2, it's something a bit broad about the effect of amenity on the residents of Sandy Bay. I mean, in some ways we have to see what the planning scheme amendment is proposed for that. But I do think that there's quite a lot of information that could be gathered together in a report. I wouldn't support it being war and peace and being a massive piece of work, but I think a really good collation of this information and just ensuring that some of this information is available and more accessible to the community, I think would probably be a good thing at this point in time. I wonder whether, in fact, this report could be almost like a background report for the public meeting, so that people going into the public meeting have some of this information that hasn't really been collated well and recently by ourselves or UTAS. So, I think so long as the report is not trying to it's more to collate and ensure that people have good information. It's not trying to sort of go over the top of a Metro Plan or a CBD Precinct Plan or the planning process, but if it's a good sort of solid bringing together of material and maybe asking UTAS a few more in-depth questions, I think I don't have a problem with it. So I'm happy to support 2, 3 and 4, but not 1. Thank you. Alderman Briscoe, did you want to?
Yes, I do. And how long have I got to do that?
3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. It has been a good discussion. It is a pity that maybe the numbers are not there just to write a letter, but that's up to the individual aldermen who don't think that that's a good way of going. But I am certain that there will be an inquiry, and we'll have to, and hopefully we'll put some presentation to them. From the discussions I've had with the MLC, the Member of the Legislative Council, there will be an inquiry, in my view. Just to say that I don't want to see the reputation of the university decline due to its real estate and developer goals. The university occupies an important cultural role in Hobart's community, nationally and internationally, both historically now and hopefully in the future. Its decisions on land use, while having a 30-year timeline, will have consequences of at least 100 years and maybe longer.
This is new information. This is meant to be a summing up, so it should be.
Sure. No, that's if you can.
No, I think it is summing up to the sentiment that has been expressed. Let me finish. It's just another line. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
So long as it's not new information.
It's just not a new information. The decisions on land use while having a 30-year timeline will be consequences that will last to perhaps 100 years and maybe longer. That's why the Hobart City Council, the community, needs to be totally satisfied of its benefits and whether it can be achieved. Now, I know some good points have been made today. It is totally within the realm of this council to look at the short and long-term ramifications of the budget of the city, because some movement's happening already. And it's in the realm of this council to look at the capital expenditure on infrastructure, because it will be millions of dollars to upgrade roads of the 2 roads they'll take over. So I think that, in my view, is a good use of a report. The land use, the K&D site, for example, was the perfect example where we could put high quality, affordable housing or housing for rent, and that won't be covered in the Metro Plan, because if the university puts a building there, that won't be available. The Metro Plan is an idealistic document. Until we see it in its fullness and it's been discussed, we can't refer to the Metro Plan because that puts it off. The university is doing this right at the moment. You cannot say, oh, we'll have to look at because the university is moving 300 of its administration staff into the old Freedom building and the forestry building, displacing 17 or 18 of the staff that work there. And I've had emails from the staff that they're about to lose their jobs because the university is taking over that building or has bought that building. There are effects on the CBD right at this moment. Thank you. And as you've said in the paper, which I was quite pleased, that I have an influence. And I hope tonight that my influence will be just as effective as it was where you referred to I had a significant influence in another decision. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, can I ask a question? It's just regard to the reports, and also the process of how we're going to go through these one at a time. But the reports mentioned in the administrative response, the proposed amendment is supported by a master plan and accompanying assessments, including all of those reports there. I assume those reports, through you to the CEO, are being assessed at the moment. All of those reports are available, but they won't be available for community engagement until the assessment has been completed.
Through you, Lord Mayor, that's correct. And are we talking about the reports on page 101 that relate to so for instance, there's a number of dot points. I just need to be clear. Yeah. Those that are raised on page 100, Lord Mayor, through you to Councillor Harvey, do relate to those higher level strategic plans that we've referred to. So the Metro Plan, as well as the strategy for growth and change as it relates to, what accompanies the Metro Plan, as well as essential Hobart Precinct Plan. So those reports, some of those studies to support that work are underway at the moment. Some have been completed, but we won't be in a position to have a draft Central Hobart Precinct Plan for some months ahead.
But also some of those reports will form part of the application for the zoning change from UTAS as well, because there's a number of issues here, like if effects on the amenity or otherwise on residents of Sandy Bay and other inner suburbs. Would a report like that be coming with the zoning amendments?
Through you, Lord Mayor, to Councillor Harvey, you're quite correct, and that's what I've been referring to when a number of these questions have been asked this evening, and that is that we apply the same rules to planning or development applications for UTAS as we do anyone else, and we require a range of merit-based assessment to understand impact. These can be traffic, these can be a whole range of things, urban form, design, and so on and so forth. Similarly with the amendment, so the planning scheme amendment, the same process applies, albeit different to a development contribution, a development application.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is part 2, that a report be provided that addresses the following. This is on the Briscoe-Zucco motion.
Oh, Lord Mayor.
The Briscoe motion, Alderman Briscoe motion, if it's going to...
It's the Briscoe Coates motion.
Yeah, anything, yeah. All right, thank you. So those reports will cover off on most of the things that are mentioned here, I imagine, or can we eliminate some of these and say this is an additional report that needs to be done? Because if these are being done anyway, asking for them again is superfluous.
So clarification, if I may, clarifies the move of the amendment. Right? if you look at the original motion, this is slightly changing, saying that a report be provided to address the following. If the information is already there available, it goes into a collation, so all of us, and I did say this in my original speech, that all of us have got all that information, and we can then make some very good assessments. What we've got is we've got a report over there, a report over here, a report on the top shelf, a report on the bottom shelf. If we've got it collated in one report, we can all sit there, and when we're determining the university, we can all sit there and read through one thing so we get an understanding of it. That was the whole intent of this. We're not reinventing the wheel. The CEO would have a lot of this information, and some that may need to be sourced. Put it into one little area so we all have got it. That was the intent.
Can I clarify the intention?
That's my clarification. I don't know about.
I have the floor.
Councillor Harvey.
So just to clarify, most of the things mentioned here are already being addressed through reports that will come to council, either through the zoning change or the other inner city precincts plan as well. So all of this information that's being asked for is being compiled or has been compiled to date.
Is that a question or is that a...
Just asking, is that a fact?
As the mover,
I haven't had my
motion,
answer yet.
As the mover,
to answer it first.
well, as the could you ask that the intention of my motion is to probably find the holes in the information that we've got. So, for example, if there hasn't been any long-term capital expenditure on infrastructure, then the report would address that. We need to do that work. Or it could be the short-term and long-term ramification of the budget of the city. That work may not have been done. The address means to highlight work that has to be done. It doesn't necessarily have to be done tomorrow or when the report comes back to us. That was my intention, to address the holes. And some of them was apparently going to be done through the Memorandum of Understanding in 2015, and it hasn't been done. So it could be, say, that part of the work has not been done. Simple as that. So that was the intention of my part two, it got clarified a little bit more by Alderman Briscoe, but it's not being clarified by Councillor Harvey.
That's what I'm asking.
Point of order, Lord Mayor.
What's your point of order?
My point of order is this, that we normally go through a process of debate, then we go through a process where the mover of the motion summarises.
Sure. Okay, well, we're getting to that.
There was some questions asked, but the questions are now becoming a debate. Yes. That's my point of order.
Okay, fine. So if there's no further, I don't think there is further discussion. So yes, we've got another question.
Councillor Harvey was going to ask the question, so
I think it is a bit late for questions.
No, it's not a question. It's not a question on the content of the motion. It was just given that there's some people who have said they'll support part of the motion and other parts of the motion. I'm going to
do them separately.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That was my only question.
So, all right.
Well, it was part of the... I accepted it.
Okay, so we're going to now move the items separately. So we'll start with item 1. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
No. All those in favour.
Alderman Briscoe, Councillor Dutta, Alderman Briscoe.
And against?
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Coates, Councillor Fox, Alderman Briscoe, Alderman Thomas, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Alderman, did you get Alderman Sexton?
Yes, I did, yes.
What is that?
Lord Mayor.
3 to 8. Thank you.
So item 2, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Briscoe, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Coates, Alderman Briscoe, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Fox and the Deputy Lord Mayor. That's carried, Lord Mayor. 7 votes to 4.
Okay, item 3. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Aye. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Briscoe, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Coates, Councillor Fox, Alderman Briscoe, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe and the Lord Mayor.
Against.
Councillor Harvey and the Deputy Lord Mayor.
And item
Carried. What was the numbers there?
Carried, Lord Mayor, 9 votes to 2.
Thank you.
all those in favour of item 4.
Aye.
Against say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Coates, Councillor Fox, Alderman Briscoe, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe and the Lord Mayor.
Against.
Deputy Lord Mayor. It's carried, Lord Mayor, 10 votes to 1.
Okay. Move on now to another motion, which is on the Battery Point walkway by Councillor Dutta. Oh yeah, Councillor Sherlock.
Oh, it was a miracle. Got through. I believe in miracles.
Chair, while we wait, Councillor Sherlock, would we be able to have a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Seeing as it's now we're going for 2 hours.
Yeah, sure, 5-minute break.
Yep.
Did someone really tell you to go back to Fiji?
It's terrible.
Hey, this is... It's the same as when you and I were on different sides of the Australian debate. People were running around saying people need to go back to China and Mexico.
And we are now on item 11. I'm going to invite Councillor Dutta to move his motion.
Thank you, Chair. I move...
I second it.
Oh.
Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you.
Council seeks advice from the CEO on the best way for Council to revisit and recommit to the Battery Point River Walkway. And for this advice to include 1, a summary of Council's most recent decisions, 2, cost of undertaking a new design that would address and negate the concerns raised by the previous walkway design, 3, the potential of including this design work in 22-23 budget estimates, and 4, potential methods of raising funds for building the walkway via development contributions from the Sandy Bay redevelopment project and other sources. I reserve my right to speak on it later on. Thank you.
Alderman Briscoe.
I don't know whether I've got enough time to be able to see a Battery Point walkway in existence, and I hope a small part of it will be saying Alderman Briscoe, for his valiant, passionate efforts over 20 years, I have a seat there or some kind of memorial. I don't think Councillor Dutta will have enough time as well, but I wish him all the luck. I wish luck to the officers, because last time I did a review of all the documentation of the Battery Point walkway. Now it's all electronic. You probably wouldn't be able to, but when we put up the stacks of reports that's happened over 20 odd years, it was 3 metres high. Last time when the council voted 11-1 to go ahead with the first stage of the Battery Point walkway, and we managed to get 11-1 vote, including the Lord Mayor of the day and the former Lord Mayor of the day, Alderman Thomas, who was up till fairly recent before we had that vote, was against it, but was convinced by argument, and we got it. What we didn't do is we didn't prepare enough on the public interest, public benefit when we went before the tribunal. And tribunals only can make decisions on information given to it. We lost that appeal because we didn't have enough public information of the benefit to the public. Now, the next time, if it gets to the design stage and it gets through council, then it's a word of warning that we should have that. Now, all the money that was set aside for the Battery Point walkway was used to make up the shortfall in the bridges over the domain. And I said, well, I'll accept that because the bridges over the domain are happening. So the millions of dollars that were set aside for the Battery Point walkway made up the budget for those 2 bridges, the Rose Bridge and the Remembrance Bridge. So all I can say is we did have the money. We haven't got the money. If we can find the money, that's great. If we can get a grant for it, that's great. I'm sure we'll be able to find money to get at least a preliminary design. So I wish when the report comes back, that we've got $80,000, I think, in our forward planning, small amount of money. And I know that won't cover much, but at least it's there. And if we brought it forward till this year or next year and double it, we'd get a preliminary design that could start touting to the politicians, state and federal, to get funding. I don't think the Hobart City Council will be in the position like it was last time to fund it itself. I think your first annual general meeting, Lord Mayor, which I recall very clearly, because it was about one question was asked about from the floor, and this was prior to COVID. You said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's not going to get ahead. We haven't got enough money." It's good that you've got on board this time, and Councillor Dutta's got on board. So I wish you luck, and hopefully I'll be here for the next iteration of the Battery Point foreshore walk, and hopefully in a position to vote for it.
Lord Mayor?
Yes, Alderman Sexton.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I'm a supporter of the Battery Point walk, and I'm perfectly happy to support a motion that asked us to have another look at it. But the problem that I've got with the current motion is that it, apart from one, which is a summary of council most recent decision, which is fine, it launches straight into the cost of undertaking a new design that would address and negate the concerns. That's assuming that a design is the problem. Now, I'm not sure that the design was the problem. And I think Alderman Briscoe has alluded to the fact that it may be very much more complex than just a better design. So before we spend any money at all on a new design, or including a design in future estimates, or raising funds for building a newly designed walkway, we have to understand precisely what it is that we would need to do to overcome the issues that saw us comprehensively shot down by the tribunal. So I can't support any more, at the moment, I can't support any of the 4 parts apart from one, summary of council's most recent decisions, because I believe that we would be embarking upon a process which is preempting what we actually need to do first. And that is to understand what it is that we will have to do, whether it's preparing the concise list of all the public benefits, if that is in fact the only issue, or whatever. Because what we don't want to have is something that will address 15 of the 16 reasons that the tribunal shot it down, and still have one, and only need one to refuse it. So I think that there needs to be some work by our planning officers first to understand exactly and to advise us exactly what we would need to do, and whether it's even possible to overcome all of the reasons that the tribunal gave for not allowing us to go ahead in the first place. So at this stage, I can't support anything other than part one, summary of council's most recent decisions, because I think that the others are going to result in unnecessary work at a time when we need to do a whole lot of other work first.
Lord Mayor, I'm not being detrimental here, but it's quite obviously we're in an election year. I think I was that number one person that voted against it.
No, it was Christie.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Christie supported it.
Eva.
I didn't support it.
Anyway.
I never supported it. You know that. Go back to the media and find out for yourself.
I will.
Lord Mayor, Alderman Sexton is very, very correct. We're putting the cart before the horse here, I'm sorry to say. Look, it's a good thought, good point. What I'd love to know is and again, a summary of council's most recent decisions and the costings associated with it, because the tribunal costs would have been absolutely over the top. What I think we really need to do in what Alderman Sexton's been saying, because I actually got the grounds of refusal here right in front of me, because I did contact our council officers to get that information. So this is not Zuko putting these points up. This is what we got. The amenity impact on surrounding property. There were 9 grounds of appeal, and this is where the tribunal refused. The amenity impact on surrounding property owners is significant, and the amenity impact of the incapable of ameliorisation. Any public benefit from the proposal does not outweigh the impacts on amenity. This included an analysis of the visual impact of the proposal. I am aware that there's been a change in planning scheme, but at the end of the day, this stands as the tribunal decision. The proposal has a deleterious impact on the privacy of adjacent landowners. The use and the enjoyment of the river would be impacted for the adjacent landowners. The impact is not capable of ameliorisation. So if we build a walkway irrespective of, do you think that can be overcome? Now, what we need, if we seriously want to have a look at this again, and I don't, right, is I think what we need first is we need a lawyer to look at the reasons for refusal by the tribunal to give us legal advice as to whether or not this council can overcome them. I have every faith in our planning department to give us
planning advice to say that, look, we believe we can overcome this and we believe, fine, but this matter cost this council thousands of dollars. We lost it badly at the tribunal, not by this much, but even if there's one, we're still got to overcome one. I believe that, and I will support only one, a summary of council's most recent decisions and the costs associated with this. Because anything else, the horse is going to bolt that far, it's unbelievable. And I just want to give everybody a little bit of what was the original intent of the walkway. The original intent of the walkway was a walkway right across the waterfront to the water's edge, so people could walk right across the waterfront at the water's edge. And at parts where they didn't have a walkway, to walk on the beach. And then, because there's plenty of rocks around there. That was the original intent. But because of certain issues, we ended up with a bikeway, plus this, plus that. And I remember the debate at the time that a bikeway to that point could have been done in a different area. And then what plans done to overcome the bikeway concerns, right? But then it was all included into one big shabazzle, and we've got this highway going across Battery Point. Because when you really look at the plans, it's a highway. So please, let's not seriously waste our time and officer time here. Let's, look, firstly, I'm going to ask the mover of the motion if he would indulge in having points 1, 2, 3 and 4 separately. That's the first question, if I may. If Alderman Dutta could, Councillor Dutta could give me that answer. Yeah. Yes. Good. Is that just before you go to Fiji, or?
And the seconder agrees.
Seconder agrees. I will support one with the minor amendment and associated costs. So I'll move that as an amendment. Can anyone second that amendment for the associated costs? Yes, thank you. So I'll move that amendment, Lord Mayor. It was either Councillor Fox or Councillor Coates. I can't remember.
By Councillor Coates. I'll put that amendment now if I can.
Sorry, just read that again, please.
Associated costs.
And associated costs of the
after item 1.
Yeah.
So, part 1, a summary of council's most recent decisions and associated costs.
Costs with the walkway.
I'm just thinking. Sorry, Lord Mayor. I'm just thinking that maybe we need a more fuller recommendation, something along the lines of that we review the Battery Point walkway with the intention of seeking whether or not it's practical to...
Alderman
Harvey?
Sorry, Councillor Harvey, sorry. Where are you speaking?
I'm debating now. Yeah, I just think we need something that's a bit more fulsome than just a summary of the council's most recent decisions. I think we need to get an analysis of whether we're wasting our time. And I agree with the points that have been made. And we fell over at whatever that hurdle was with regard to community benefit. So do we need to have a different approach to this time? I'm just asking a question through you. Okay. What's the most appropriate sort of motion that we could potentially turn this into to get the outcome we require? Like, the CEO is probably not familiar with the Battery Point walkway, but... I'm
sure she will be.
Yeah. That was a question.
Through you, Lord Mayor. Look, I think it's a difficult question for me to answer in a helpful way as it relates to the motion itself. What I can say, Lord Mayor, through you, is that we would, of course, in coming back to you, would complete that sort of analysis just as part of our completeness. Whether you need to move that into the motion, I don't have a view, but we would look at that as a matter of course, Lord Mayor, particularly as it related to the decision that I know Acting Director City Life has in front of her. So we'd go back to that and look at the costings as well, Lord Mayor, just as part of a completeness process.
Okay, so is there any more discussion on the amendment? Because I'd rather get that done now and come back to the motion either as it is or as amended. Yeah. So if there's no further discussion on the adding and associated costs to 1, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Okay, continuing on with the debate on the motion as amended. Any discussion?
Lord Mayor, it's ironic, but one of the only sources of funds that was originally put up for this was the connecting campus to campus. When we were looking at Sandy Bay to the city, yeah, still could happen, Jeff. That's right. Look, at one stage, and I do think Alderman Eva Razika does need to be acknowledged here, because she was adamant that this was a fool's folly, that it was up to $36 million in cost.
She didn't
like it. A huge amount. She didn't like it. She didn't like the cost of this council either. But look, at the end of the day, one of the precepts or the precursors of this Part 4 is that the Sandy Bay redevelopment project, let's not go back there, we were just talking about, actually would be part of the funder or a major part of the funding. I think it's too premature. I really do. We've got the issue that Alderman Sexton raised, and it was also enunciated by others. Just to get, I mean, we've got motions in this chamber going back to 2013. We don't need to add another one in 2021. Just to get all the material together. Somebody, I think Alderman Briscoe, raised the fact that it was 3 metres tall or something. I mean, that's a huge impost on staff. I just think that until we're obviously, you did, good, well, yeah, we are going to acknowledge you properly tonight. We are, I promise. Every time I speak, I'll acknowledge.
No, you don't have to.
I did in the first place. Look, the point is, Lord Mayor, we have really got some really incredibly busy things happening in this council at the moment. I don't mind if somebody in their private time wants to look at those positions that were raised by the tribunal against the council, but then bring it back here before anything else is done. Anything else is done at all.
Further discussion, Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I know Alderman Briscoe said that there was a number of people that were indicating, such as Alderman Thomas, that were going to vote against this when it was last discussed, and he was able to sway. I might challenge somebody to try and sway me. Look, I think, Lord Mayor, Alderman Sexton touched on something that I was concerned of. I can't see. I see this, and I wasn't here for the history. I think when I was born. No, I do remember being too young. I do remember seeing it on the news and being too young to much care about it at the time. But this was put to planning, and it was, as Alderman Briscoe said, summarily rejected by the tribunal. And I don't think. Well, I think that this is one of those applications where the nature of it in and of itself was the reason that it was going to have an undue impact on the amenity of those houses. I don't think a tinkered with design or a slightly different design was going to address the real factor in either the walkway had to be designed such that it impacted on the access to all of those properties to the water, or it was to be so high up that it was to impact on their privacy. And I don't see a way at which this walkway could be done that wouldn't impact on the amenity of those houses in one way or another. I would say that, this is something that was going to cost us a huge amount of money. I don't think this is the time for us to be even considering such a thing, given how summarily this was rejected at the tribunal, given that we have some real issues facing this city. And I think this is a bit of a side venture that members of the community, I don't think, are even really calling for. I don't see this as something that would benefit the local area, and I think it's something that will only cause angst and animosity amongst those immediate houses at the cost to the ratepayer. If this was an application that was being put forward by a private developer, the majority of council here would be smashing it. So, because of the impacts on residential amenity, this wouldn't even get past the first hurdle. So I do find it odd that we're sitting here talking about revisiting something that was so high profile in the animosity that it triggered from the community at the time, and something that was so clearly rejected on planning grounds. And I don't think that it's possible for us to put forward a design that isn't going to impact on those that large number of houses there. I don't think it's something that's necessary.
Just to start off with, and I know this is sort of something that happens occasionally in council, where we have just the beginning of the motion, the proposed development set out in the UTAS master plan. We have something being used to justify this motion that hasn't happened yet. We don't know that it's going to happen. We're still yet to assess whether or not it's going to be approved or not. So to use that as a justification to kick this off, I think is erroneous. But most of all, I don't think this is something that council should be putting its limited attention, limited resources to. Something that's only going to negatively affect those in the surrounding neighbourhood. Something that they've made it very, very, very clear over the years that they don't want. So look, I won't be supporting this, and I'd be urging everyone here not to support this. I think we as a council have much more important issues to focus on, and I think we have issues to focus on that will improve the lives and amenity of those that live in this city, and not detract for it, or reduce some reduce some to benefit a small minority that might use it. So look, I just don't see a way that we can in good conscience support this, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Coates.
Look, thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, very quickly, I seconded the amendment because if number one does get up, I think it's important to have the costings laid in. That is a very important consideration, considering the stage it went to last time. But look, as has been noted, unless I see evidence to be otherwise that we're going to get a different result trying the same thing, I just see this as a bit of a fool's errand. Look, I think from a governance point of view, we've tasked the officers to do so much with so limited resources. This would just seem to sort of add to that burden. So I'll be voting against the whole motion. Look, I appreciate the sentiment, and I think a lot of members of the community would love to see that access path built, but at the end of the day, we are all bound by what is and isn't allowed under the planning scheme and under the law, and the residents that are there and put in the objection have every right to that protection. And look, obviously the tribunal at the time found that as well. So the other thing I guess I'd note is that, we want to give the officers the capacity to actually identify key projects for the city and key priorities, and then report that back up to us as a governance model. And in some ways, I think when we sort of push these things into place, especially around sort of ultimately what is an infrastructure investment, it does sort of denude that process a little bit. So look, I'm not saying this one wouldn't necessarily have merit, but there might be 20 other cycleways, walkways, connection points that might have more merit. And ultimately, us as a governance model, we should let the officers have the freedom and capacity to go off and assess that and come to us and say, look, here's our recommendation. So look, with that in mind, I'll be voting against it, but if number one does get up, I think the amendment was a good amendment to it.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I appreciate what Councillor Coates said about governance. We've had examples of motions tonight which haven't really sort of followed great governance lines, but well, with amendments just presented to us. So, but I'd like just to say,
I can't believe that statement.
Yeah, point of order. There's interruption, I think, but it needs to be.
But Alderman Harvey interrupted me hundreds of times. Yeah, settle down.
Yeah. Okay, Deputy Lord Mayor.
thank you. I'll make note in the response from the CEO or the council officers that on page 102 it says that the council has, however, maintained a notional funding allocation in its forward projections to revisit the design options for the walkway in the future. So, there is, it's one of these lasting things that we've got a slight grasp on still. We've had lots of to and fro in this chamber in relation to the walkway, and my recollection was that actually, and Alderman Sexton might be able to tell me, but overwhelmingly in Battery Point, when we had went to Battery Point community meetings, there was considerable support for the walkway. Not so with Clark Avenue residents, I think is probably what I remember. So I think there was, thank you. So I think there was considerable support for this, and to me, As well, I'm probably a notional bike rider at the moment, but certainly a scooter rider, and liking getting around where I can walk, knowing full well what it's like to walk beaches or coastlines because of designated pathways free of cars. This is such a sensible move to revisit this. So I appreciate the motion in its entirety. I remember that one of the reasons for refusal, I think, was for the sort of exit point off the bridge and onto the road system, that was a problem. So there was a design fault there, and that's something that could be tinkered with and actually improved, because we know full well that was a problem, if my memory serves me correctly. So there are great examples around Australia and around the world where there are coastal or river walks or pathways, and not only is that a boon for locals to exercise. If you go to West Beach, Glenelg, Semaphore in South Australia, you see so many people walking every hour of the day. You know, like, it's just incredible how much it's used. So I imagine and envisage, because I can see into the future or think about the future, that this would be a real asset to our city, not only for locals but visitors alike. So I wholeheartedly support this and suggest that to the rest of the council that they support it too.
Further discussion? There's no further discussion. I'd like to make a couple of points before Councillor Dutta sums up. I think this is an important motion because it is a piece of connecting infrastructure that the council, and through Alderman Briscoe's stewardship of the issue for many years, the council recognised was a really important link for the city, between the south of the city and the centre of the city, and connecting the waterfront. It's important both for visitors. It's a very good asset for visitors, but it's also really important as a connector for the community, and I think it would be very popular and heavily used. I think the suggestion that there's strong animosity against this project is completely inaccurate. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. I think it would be a very large number of residents and visitors to Hobart would use it and appreciate it. I just also wanted to pick up on Councillor Coates's question or suggestion that this is somehow poor governance, or that we're sort of, that someone's kind of just pulled this out of nowhere, and it should, the officers haven't brought it up to us. I actually think it's really good governance, because what Councillor Dutta has noticed that I had failed to notice was that we actually committed to doing this work in the city deal. So this is a city deal that we all signed off on in 2009. Maybe not Councillor Coates, he wasn't on council, but it's listed in here that Hobart City Council will undertake projects to extend and improve pedestrian access, and that includes a further $500,000 to progress the Battery Point walkway. So that's a commitment we made that we haven't yet. In fact, it was in after 2019, it was in our budget for that amount, and then because of COVID, it has dropped off. And I would hope that we wouldn't have to spend $500,000, but that's what the report will tell us. I think it's assumed in item 2 that, of course, the cost of undertaking a new design to address and negate the concerns raised by the previous walkway would include the reasons it failed at the planning tribunal. That was one of the concerns includes the fact that some parts of it failed in the planning tribunal. But my understanding of the tribunal decision is that many of the items actually got up. In fact, a majority of the matters the council actually won on. It was only a minority of items that it didn't. And I do think council can address any sort of issues around planning with design. We all advocate the benefits of good design, and a good design would, I think almost inevitably be able to get around the planning issues. But if it doesn't, then the report will come back to us and say, look, we think that design can't deal with these planning matters. I am concerned by the comment that, we'll never be able to deal with the amenity concerns of the waterfront residents of Clark Avenue. Well, I think that's basically putting up our hands and saying that, the riverfront only belongs to the people who can buy a house right on it. I think the idea would be that the design can address the amenity and the privacy concerns and still be an asset for the vast majority of people that would be able to walk on our riverway and enjoy it. So, I think for the reasons that, we've made an undertaking over many years, there was a commitment made in the city deal that we would progress the design, that it is clearly a strategic piece of infrastructure. I think this is just a report. It's not saying that we're definitely proceeding, but it's giving us a sense of how we would need to proceed, and giving us some ideas about ways we may use things like developer contributions to fund it as well. Okay, Councillor Dodd, did you want to sum up?
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. I quite appreciate that critical analysis. I want to firstly make a comment and note that I give credit to Alderman Briscoe for initially bringing it up. So I want to make that point quite clearly. Secondly, the other point that I want to make is this was initiated simply because, as already the Lord Mayor has mentioned, there is 500,000 set aside. That is the basic rationale. Now, the other rationale, which is based on the assumption, if the university goes ahead, if it is conditional to that, then you can have that contribution, because there has been some talk along the lines. So it is not based on the university, but if that happens, then you have another avenue of funding. Thirdly, the other point that was made with regards to the community and those who are 11 who objected, let me emphasize very clearly that the evidence shows quite clearly that out of the 434 people who were surveyed, the majority, 3/4 of the people in Battery Point and along Sandy Bay supported it. So there was quite a strong support. Just because 11 of them were able to go against it didn't mean that the community were not supporting this particular thing. The important point for me is it's people and not privilege. I think that's very, very fundamental for us to understand, that it belongs to the people, it belongs to the community, and not just the privileged few. The other point that I want to make here is this, that the decision, I understand, at the tribunal, and others who have that background would know that a tribunal is not a court. Now, at the tribunal, when the decision was made, it was made on planning grounds and not legal grounds. So the reasons of refusal, if you read, I read 76 pages of it just a few days ago. And as the Lord Mayor has said, those grounds of the appeal was won, we can revisit that. And to say now, how can we have a counter to this particular decision that was made? So therefore, not wanting to take any more time, because points have been made already, I would be simply here wanting to say to you that this is a report, and the administration response to this is a very positive one, because at the end it says this is possible, and there is a allocation of some money put alongside this particular project. So with those comments, I would simply say that, it will be simply a report. We are not going to build it. That is not the point. It is the first step towards giving us more information. Thank you.
Now, I have a question, Lord Mayor, if you wouldn't mind. A statement's been made of legalities. Through you to the appropriate officer that can answer this question. Did the Hobart City Council have the right to take the matter to the Supreme Court to overturn the tribunal's decision?
Baby?
Through you, Lord Mayor, yes, it did have that right, and it chose not to do so.
And the council chose not to take the legal avenue. Thank you very much.
That's not the question, Lord Mayor. So the legal avenue wasn't taken because of cost factor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, Lord Mayor,
I think that wasn't
not
a question to you.
Correct.
I think it was a question to Ms. Aby.
Thank you.
Sorry.
My decision was...
Sorry, Mr Abbey.
I'm sorry, Lord Mayor, my knowledge does not extend that far. I don't know whether anybody else is able to assist.
Not a baby boomer.
Okay, I think we'll get moving on this one now. So I think it's meant to be voted on separately. So all those in favour of item 1?
Which is the summary, is it?
Well, I mean, the entire motion includes the statements at the beginning. So it's pretty hard to, I guess, it is kind of hard to separate it in some ways. But I think if you're...
So the preamble would be part of one.
Preamble is part of the motion.
Yep,
so
okay.
All those in favour of the preamble say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Part 1 includes
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Fox, Alderman Briscoe, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis and Alderman Thomas. That's carried, Lord Mayor, 8 votes to 4.
Okay, so now item 1, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. So show of hands.
The
all
amended
those-
one, Lord Mayor.
Yeah, with the amended.
The amended one, sorry, Lord Mayor.
It says the associated costs at the end of, and associated
A
costs.
summary of the Council's most recent decisions and
Associated costs, yeah. All those in favour say aye. Oh, sorry, all those in favour, put your hands up.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton,
Yeah, I know,
Councillor
Bob.
Harvey,
Yeah,
Councillor
that's
Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Fox, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Okay, item 2.
And are those against?
Oh, sorry, against, sorry.
Councillor Coates. It's carried, Lord Mayor, 11 votes to 1.
Okay, item 2, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Fox, Alderman Briscoe, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
And all those against, sorry.
Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas and Alderman Sexton, sorry.
Okay.
That's carried, Lord Mayor, 7 votes to 5.
All right. Item 3, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Fox, Alderman Briscoe, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis and Alderman Thomas. As carried, Lord Mayor, 7 votes to 5.
And item 4. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour.
Councillor Harvey,
Can't do this
Councillor
at one
Dutta,
time.
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Fox, Alderman Briscoe, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis and Alderman Thomas, and that's carried, Lord Mayor, 7 votes to 5 as well.
Okay. So that's done.
Keeping the hope alive.
Great. Now would you like to continue or have a break for?
No, continue.
Okay.
Get it over and done with.
Item 12. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm going to have to offer a belated declaration of interest in item 12.
Okay. Sorry, Deputy Lord Mayor, your motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to move the motion as it stands on the
Second, Lord
books.
Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Fox.
Lord Mayor, this motion, as it suggests, seeks to address some of the chronic housing shortage the City of Hobart is facing. This council, since we were sworn in, and Councillor Coates made a very strong commitment to doing what we can regarding housing and homelessness, and I've been really proud of what the council has achieved. We signed off our affordable housing and homelessness commitment for 2021-23, which builds on the work through the updating of the updated housing and homelessness strategy of 2016 to 2019. we've got various committees. We're often having meetings in relation to housing and homelessness, obviously a significant issue which our community faces. So this motion looks to find levers and to increase and not decrease the housing stock in our municipality. It draws on both incentives such as rates rebates and looks at ways to increase homes by building and decreasing housing in and decreasing housing in residential areas lost to whole house short-term visitor accommodation. So I reiterate, it's whole houses that we're looking that are going into short stay accommodation, and the committee members and council members will be well aware of the recent report and the number of registered whole house visitor accommodation across our municipality. It's almost 500, and in the past 6 months, the last 6 months of 2021, it was increasing as well. So it went up, I think, 41 houses going to short stay accommodation. So what this motion does is use levers which we underutilise, quite frankly. When I was looking at this report, putting this report together and getting officer advice, we underutilise our differential rate system. And so what this looks at doing is getting a report to look at determining an appropriate variable or differential rate for whole house visitor accommodation properties that are in, I might not point out, residential properties, so in residential areas, not commercial properties. To also look at a differential rate for vacant land zoned as residential. So that's trying to use disincentives, if you like, to swap to whole house short stay accommodation. And we saw one very example today where there was a long-term rental at 313 Wayne Avenue, which was the motion was to, or the development application was to make this short stay accommodation instead. So effectively, those people who are living there will have to go and find something else in a really restricted market. And we'll also be looking at vacant land that is zoned as residential. And I've had a look, scanned some of our areas in our city. And I know close to where I used to live in Lena Valley many years ago, there's a sheep paddock in the middle of a residential area. So, you know, like why are we not getting houses built there where we can? The report also looks at rebates. So in other municipalities, there are rebates for those who build residential property as their primary place of staying, or if they make it long-term residential, so long-term rental. So I think it's quite clear. I'm happy I'm really happy to put this to committee. I know that there are amendments. I know that everybody wants to take it one by one, but really in its entirety, it's looking at what we can use as a council, bearing in mind that we have to have a class of rateable short stay accommodation, which is coming up in a local government association meeting at the end of the week, and it's on the agenda as well. So so we can look at those levers that help with addressing some of the housing problem in our municipality. Thank you.
Did we have a seconder for that? Was that? Alderman Thomas was on his feet first.
Yeah, thank you. So just a question through you, Lord Mayor, to the Deputy. So you're prepared to allow this to be committed back to committee for a proper discussion?
No, it's to be discussed here and reports to...
Okay.
Yeah, and if I can just explain, Alderman Thomas,
sure.
Perhaps it's a question that might be better to the CEO, but this is for an urgent report to be considered in relation to variable rates, and there's a whole lot of, according to the information from the CEO, there is a whole lot of rates work to be done as well.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll continue. My concern with this is, and I was really pleased when we did start the Housing with Dignity Committee of this council. The Property Council of Australia, Tasmania Division today, came out with some really strong suggestions in the state budget context in relation to increasing the supply of affordable housing and making Crown land, I guess we don't have a lot, available for housing shortfall of need over demand over supply. The concern I have with this is that I'm actually very comfortable for a report to come back, but what I think we shouldn't be saying is we shouldn't be saying an urgent report, be prepared to determine appropriate variable differential rates for the following, because that's actually prejudging that it is a good idea to do this. There's 1,000 reasons why land, there is land, I agree, that's left for years and you wonder why it is, and there's commercial sites such as the old service station down at Sandy Bay, which is just growing weeds for the last 8 or 9 years. And I put something on Facebook saying, this is a disgrace. And many people, and somebody said, oh, it's your Facebook friends, came back and said, how dare you touch our properties and stuff. But the reality is, that's been a site that has ruined a commercial precinct. It's unsightly. We can do nothing with it. Somebody said, oh, maybe the drums haven't been, the tanks haven't been taken out, but that is 9 or 10 years now. What I would like to do, I'd like to support this motion, so I did speak to the Deputy to see if I could have an amendment agreed by the floor in one to add the words, an urgent report be prepared to provide council with advice it can use to determine if it is appropriate to seek approval to apply variable or differential rates for the following, because we might come up with, there may be a number of reasons why there are so many exceptions or issues that relate to that. I want to see a report that says how it's worked, why we should do it and why there would be issues about doing it, because what this initially asked for is not that check it out, it is asking for an advice on what rates we would charge, not whether we should charge differential rates.
Sorry, can I just, can you just
it's slightly
say
too
slowly
19th century
exactly
lawyer, but can you change your one? Sorry, I did propose it to the Deputy.
So
one would be
Thomas motion.
Oh no, it would not, sir. I'm going to acknowledge you somehow. An urgent report be prepared. So it would read number one, an urgent report be prepared to provide council with advice it can use to determine if it is appropriate to seek approval, because we have to get it from somewhere else, we have to get it from the government, to apply variable/differential rates for the following. So we're seeking the advice to determine if it's the appropriate mechanism, the appropriate lever, it may be, and then then we can use that to approach government for a change.
I'm happy to accept that in if the seconder is happy with that.
You are. So sorry, just let's get it just absolutely clear.
Yeah, can I just ask a point of clarification about the amendment, if that's okay? I'm just wondering when, just with regards to what already exists here, what would, just through you, sorry, Chair, to the CEO, what would be the process of point one already? Wouldn't it effectively be doing what Alderman Thomas is already asking for us to do? The report would essentially provide council with advice it can use.
It actually.
Sorry, I'll just finish. That is what my question is. Is that what the report would already do anyway?
Through you, Lord Mayor, look, again, this sort of gets into the similar territory we were in earlier about how would you word an amendment to a motion. Suffice it to say, I mean, we'd look at a range of aspects as officers and make recommendations back that would look at the whole rating strategy in totality and various implications accordingly. Thank you.
Which, for clarification, Lord Mayor, is why I propose that we get the advice that we can then use to determine if it's appropriate, and it's been accepted in.
Appropriate to charge variable differential rates, is that right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I'll sit down again. It's all right.
I just think it's important to get clear on the wording.
Send it to Mr. Jackson.
Was
Oh, right,
first,
okay.
actually.
That's
Alderman
okay.
Zuko.
I'm just a little bit older than he is. I take a while to get up.
Less experience as well, by
That means I have more experience than you.
It's okay, well, now I'll just let the children play and then we'll get back to
He looks
the...
younger than you too, Jeff.
Right, you're right, yeah, okay. Lord Mayor, look, I did speak to the Deputy today. Like I just briefly mentioned to Councillor Dutta about his motion, I wasn't quite happy with it. I did actually have a couple of little discussions with the Deputy. I cannot support Part B, and I did ask the Deputy if at all possible, if you could move those two parts separately, because I can support Part A, and the reasons why is that if we, but conditional, and I agree with what Alderman Thomas is saying, and I would like to know, and I'm going to go through you, Lord Mayor, to any officer that can answer it. Can we at this point in time implement a differential rate? Can someone answer that?
Through you, CEO, or Ms McDonnell?
Yep.
Through you, Lord Mayor. Yes, we can apply a differential rate for different land uses, but not for different property types that are short stay accommodation at this stage without legislative change.
Right. So look. I, as I said, I support the Deputy in the aspect of Part A, but I think our first step here is we need to actually put in a request to the legislators to give us the opportunity to do so, to go down that track. And the reason why I'm saying that, and I did ask the officers today, or over the weekend, to provide me with the information in regards to what occurred when we had and Mr. Short, probably the only person that might remember this as a council officer, what occurred in regards to this special rate we struck for the CBD marketing that we had. It got to a point where, I've got the information here, I can bring it up now from Mr. Jackson here. Here it is, right. We struck a special rate in regards to the City Heart Association, and we had to stop that special rate because the council didn't actually have the legal power to do so, and we were nearly taken to court on it. So I think the last thing we would like to do, and Deputy, please allow me to get to the point, thank you, is I think our first step, and number one step, is to actually look at how we can go down the track of the differential rate. And I think that should be the priority of number one in respect of this. Now, I actually also like what Alderman Thomas said. This is one of those things that I'd love to actually discuss at length in a committee. And I've already advised the Deputy today, I've got a notice of motion that I want to put forward, and I'm actually going to put it in the planning committee because it'll be good to have a good debate around planning. And I'm just hoping and asking all our elected members to give consideration on something we had in place that we would always put our notices of motion to a committee. If it lost, you had the right to bring it to council for further discussion. If it won, it actually progressed. But due to the election process of the last year, that went through the wayside. And to my point of view, it actually allows us to actually sit around a table and debate motions far better and easier. I support Part A if we could strike a rate, and I'll explain why. I've had discussions with many people in the short stay accommodation, and I understand even some of those people have concerns with those people that are using whole of houses as a commercial business. I think that's inappropriate. To me, the short stay accommodation component being Airbnb
not mention.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter. It's all right. Sorry?
I don't think you should mention a particular firm.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's, you know.
Please.
Whether it's Airbnb, Stays, Bookings.com or whoever, or Marty Zuko Proprietary Limited, all right, okay? Oh, look, can I have an extension, because this is very important. Can I get a 3-minute extension, please, because this is very, I want to get to a point here.
Moved by Alderman Baraka, seconded by
Lord Mayor.
Councillor Coates. All those in favour say aye.
Insofar, I've spoken to these people. Some of those people have concerns. To me, those operations should be more so down the track. I'm talking about residential versus commercial here. Should be of a nature where it should be a principal place of residence and or a family shack principal place of residence. I've got no problems there. But when we're getting the whole of house, it's to me no different than turning a house into a doctor's surgery. I support home businesses. I don't want to see us have a differential rate for a home business. But when a residential house is being used specifically for commercial purposes, it should have a differential rate. Our problem is at the moment, we can't do it. So that should be our first step. I was going to move an amendment tonight, and Craig can put it up if you like, and I've got copies if everyone does. And I'll just explain this.
Is this another one since the one you gave us before?
I'll explain this. Under the Act, under the meeting procedures, we're entitled to put amendments up. So let's not...
It's the same one you gave us.
Yeah, the same one I gave you earlier. Now, there is another issue, it's the arbitrage system that we need to seriously look at. Now, if people don't understand what the arbitrage system is, arbitrage, whatever it is, it's a shocking word.
Please explain.
Please explain. It is when a person rents a house and then uses it for short stay accommodation. Now, in some states, it's actually illegal. Okay, so there's that, and my amendment is going to be that a report also consider the use of the arbitrage system for residential properties that are in turn used for short stay accommodation, because I honestly believe that should be in line with other states. That the accommodation that in consideration to the differential rate, the report consideration be given to the following: any individual who uses the principal place of residence for short stay accommodation or home businesses will not be subject to any preferential rating. Get rid of the person there, I'm very sorry about that. Individuals or associated companies who own a residential property that is not their principal place of residence, that is being used for short stay accommodation, will be subject to a differential rate. And individuals who own a personal family holiday home defined as a shack that is used from time to time for short stay accommodation will not be subject to a differential rate. And I believe that if we're going down the track, if we can, of a differential rate, that if a differential rate is struck, the report consider the use of such funds to be used for homelessness and housing.
30 seconds.
So if we're going to do something and decide, and if we can have a differential rate, let's at least use those funds towards what we're all being nice about in helping people that really need it. Because what we'll do with it is put it into just consolidated revenue rather than going to a very good cause. Now, I'm happy to move that as an amendment,
That's time.
but I don't support Part B. Okay?
Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you.
I said I was going to move as an amendment.
Oh, sorry.
Respond as the mover of the motion.
But good governance means that that when the debate happens, you can. I've got the floor, I presume.
I just need to find out if there's a mover, a seconder for the amendment.
Jeff, sorry.
So, is there a seconder for Alderman Zuko's amendment? That's Councillor Barakas.
Can I get up now?
Yes.
Oh, I'm getting my exercise today. My old arthritic body. Lord Mayor.
Amendment or?
No, I'm not. I'm speaking on the motion.
Seeking
Is that okay?
clarification, yeah.
Look, I understand the intent, and today when I drove up, there were 4 homeless people seeking shelter under our car park there, our automatic car park, and the officers moved them away. And I said, well, it's raining, you've got nowhere to... And I talked to them a bit, so I directed them to the Hunter Room. I said, you're allowed at any time to go in the Hunter Room. It's open to the public. You can't drink or smoke there as long as you go follow the rules with COVID. I know there's a housing issue problem in Hobart. My colleagues tell me about their children who cannot afford, even if they're on combined salaries, the partner and them on 100,000 cannot afford accommodation. They're living in garages or camping grounds or a very long way away where they have to travel. We all know there's a housing crisis. So I imagine, and I could ask the Deputy, her intention is to improve the stock for homeless people and people who can't afford houses. Affordability. We know we're in a crisis. Is that your intention? Can I ask that question through you, Lord Mayor, to the Deputy? Because whether I support this or not, it depends on your answer. If you say it's your intention, I'm happy.
Sorry, just ask the question again.
Oh, sorry. The intention of your motion is to help alleviate the housing crisis, whether it's affordability or whether it's homeless people or whatever. You know, it's the general homelessness issue we've got in Hobart or the affordability issue.
Respond to that question.
That's what I said in my preamble, and it says here in the motion.
Good. Thank you for that. Through you, Lord Mayor. Thank you to the Deputy. So what is the status of the last notice of motion to do with restricting Airbnb, or sorry, short stay accommodation in, what's the status of that? Was the report coming back to us?
CEO.
Through you, Lord Mayor, Alderman Briscoe, that's correct. It's required to come back to Council for consideration.
So will it canvass issues of the ways we could deal with the proliferation, maybe the proliferation of Airbnbs in our, short stay accommodation in our suburbs?
Through you, Lord Mayor, I don't believe so, because this stage of the work is actually dealing with the planning matters specifically to do with the amendment that would be required, Lord Mayor.
All right. So there is another, what I'm basically saying, there's another process that's going through that will come back and hopefully deal with some aspects of the short-term accommodation things.
Lord Mayor, that's correct, and my understanding is that relates very specifically to the planning provisions.
Yeah. Okay. The way I look at this is that I think we need a report. If other cities in Australia do it, it may be of value to see the evidence. It is an additional tax on a property owner. So if it continues to be a short stay accommodation, it means that the fees for the guests there will rise. You know, so it's not as if it may in a short some instance mean that property goes on the market. We know that inner city suburbs are approaching a median price of $1 million. So that probably won't help our homeless issues. It won't help our affordability issues. It's just another house for a mainland couple or mainland sea change person to buy. It may not have the intent that the Deputy has. And I said it's a good intent, and I support the intent. It may not. If the properties are going up in the value, the land tax paid on that property increases, as we know. So that's one way the state gets some money out of a valuable property. We know rates go up. That's another way, just ordinary rates go up is another way the city gets money out of it. If we have a differential rate, what's the effect of the differential rate? Is it a positive one? It may be a positive one in a small country town in New South Wales or Queensland, but it may not be in a capital city. So, as I said, vacant land, the question is, vacant land could be vacant for various reasons. It could be, I put in a bid for Sunnyside House in Newtown, a lovely colonial mansion that lost its 50 acres that was around there in the colonial a few years ago, attached to this colonial property, which is beautiful. I nearly was able to afford it. I didn't quite get there. It was 4 bits of land which they've used, 4 residential bits of land which they've used to give a curtilage to this beautiful colonial house. Do we saying, oh, you must build on that land, but it's the curtilage of a beautiful colonial house? So there are examples where vacant land shouldn't be built on, in a sense, even if it's zoned as residential. And the third one, I think, is there any vacant land in Hobart that is for sale? Because I know people who left the vacant land beside them for their grandchildren, so they can eventually build a house. So it's time, is it? Yeah, our timekeeper has just indicated this time.
About 12 minutes again.
Another 12 minutes. Can I have an extension of 1 minute?
You're not even at you've still got a minute, more than a minute.
Oh, have I? So you...
Sounds like we're going for hours. Okay.
Thank you. And I thought the CEO nodded. Okay, so take away those few seconds of the floor, anyway, so all I can say is that I was going to give an example that I know from personal experience. The grandparent has kept the vacant land beside him in Lena Valley because they're going to give it to their grandchildren. The grandchildren can't afford to build a house yet, but they will in the future. Do we put an extra tax on them because of the intention of leaving the land so their children, their grandchildren can act? So it is a complex issue. It's not a simple lever you can push that has the effect right across the municipality. No. And do we tax land up at Ridgeway that is empty and it's residential land? Do they want to increase the density in their lovely, lovely village atmosphere out there? So it is, and a bushland setting which may add to the bushfire risk. So all those things are very complex. So unfortunately, I won't be supporting the one about land if we're allowed to vote separately.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Coates.
Look, thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll keep my comments short. From what I'm sitting in front of me, from what I heard, I think the amendments proposed by Alderman Thomas are very good. From what I can see in these amendments, that's again very good, and some actually very interesting points raised, especially that one about the arbitrage, which I hadn't thought of. Look, I guess I just want to speak a little bit to some principles in this motion, and when I sort of considered it over the weekend and whether I'd support it here tonight. Look, I think I appreciate we can all agree there's an affordability issue. For those of us in younger demographics, it hits those in our circles very hard. But and I appreciate that the intent of this would appear to be, and from the contribution of the speech, is to provide a disincentive, if you like, for not developing land or putting something into short-term accommodation. But I guess I'll just make the observation that that disincentive already exists. If it's a principal place of residence, you don't pay land tax. If it's not, you do. And it's significant. You can drive around the city and you'll see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of residents who, quite frankly, are finding it very burdensome and high. So that disincentive does exist, and I appreciate that a long-term rental is they get income off that and they also pay land tax. However, arguably that land tax is a tax offset. So look, I think when it comes to the first sort of motion made, I think in some ways that disincentive does exist already. And look, my concern with number 2 ultimately is, look, I appreciate we might be able to offer rates rebates to encourage building, but I think this motion might be a little bit fast in coming to us as council rather than sort of going through a workshop process, because I'm not sure that us as a council are actually in a position where we should be doing that. I mean, we do have significant debt. We are staring down what potentially could be a recession coming in a not too distant future. You only have to look at the price of petrol and the cost of living to know that people are going to be feeling the squeeze. And to be fair, I'm not so confident that we actually have the financial wherewithal ourselves as a local government to be sort of going down that path. So look, I appreciate very much the sentiment of what's being proposed, but I think it might just be a little bit hasty to sort of consider this at the council level now. I think this is part of a larger body of work that we probably should look at workshopping and getting our heads around. There are lots of, I asked a question, I got a response at the last planning meeting. There were 600 hotel rooms taken off the short-term accommodation market. All these things interact. There's no sort of magic bullet, silver bullet. But I think a lot of what's proposed here, although yes, I can see what the intent is, I think it exists in reality already. And I think we need to be a bit more strategic and sort of go through the a full analysis and allow officers time and get in evidence and have a full discussion, rather than just coming as a motion to full council. Thanks.
I'll have a go.
Time starts.
Yeah, no, I'm timing my own time here. Get the hourglass. Look, Lord Mayor, I think the thing we've done really well in this council is discuss the housing and homelessness crisis for a number of years, and really the biggest achievement we've had is to have a committee and a whole lot of wishful things happening, you know, plus our other officers have done programs on the street to support people in housing crisis. We help find people accommodation, but we haven't actually created the additional homes that we really need to be looking at. And I guess, well, we have to some degree. We've had several properties that Hobart owns turned into affordable housing, such as the recent one in Goulburn Street the last few years, the one you've been associated with for a long time, Common Ground, two of those projects. There's two other projects that we have signed off just recently, one next to the TAFE and another one, someone? Yep. So we have contributed through the planning scheme with passing proposals or agreeing to proposals, but there's a lot of things we could be doing like this, but we'll debate this endlessly. A report will come back. We probably never deliver anything on this. However, I just think it's time that we start to, you know, our actions need to be implemented. Some of the thoughts, we all agree that we need to solve this problem, but we still haven't nailed any big real solutions when it comes to the 2,000 empty houses in Tasmania, or the 241 whole houses that have been taken out of the rental market because of full houses out of the short stay accommodation. So I think we really need to be looking at something that we can really do. And differential rating, I think, is a positive, and that there's 281 houses already that potentially could contribute a bit more because they're now commercial houses, they're mini hotels. Some of them are owned by corporations. They're aggregating their houses to form, you know, mini hotels and things. So I think this needs to happen sooner rather than later. And I just want to pick up on something Damon said, and it's a really important factor that we need to be really aware of, and we probably should be writing to the Property Council, because today in that article, what they suggested is completely unsustainable for any city. What they were basically saying is we support urban sprawl. So they were arguing that they wanted to open up more land for development. And that's not something we should be, you know, encouraging, and we should be resisting, because that extra urban land adds to the woes we've got at the moment with regard to access to services, people having to relying on cars. It's not good urban design, not good planning to keep expanding the urban growth boundary. They may not be calling for that to be expanded, but land to be released within it possibly. But we need to be conscious of getting things done, and I'm very hopeful that what the Deputy is aiming for here, we can actually implement in a short time. There's other explanations or other you know, response from the administrative response that talks about we're looking at these things anyway. But we've got so many fronts open at the moment, and that's why I think the frustration happens and people keep bringing things to council, is because we haven't signed off on so many of those other things that we've said we're going to look at, that we haven't got that big plan for how we as a council look to other councils for the best examples and pull it all together and come up with a, you know, differential rate system, for example, in Hobart, plus the other planning things that everyone in the room has talked about at various times, and work towards those many solutions that we've argued around this table for the last, I don't know how many years.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just want to make a few observations. Firstly, that I want to commend the Deputy for bringing this motion. I think the motion and the rationale is very well argued and supported in my view. Point number two, the observation I make is this, that it is simply asking for a report and nothing else, not a decision. And the third point I make is this, that it is my understanding that when a report will come, it will come with all those points that has already been made. The analysis, the points, the additions, it'll be a holistic report. And that's what I've always, in my experience, have seen. When the report comes, it's a holistic report. It is then we can argue, debate, and then vote on it. So therefore, I would support this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Sum up, Deputy.
I wonder if I could just ask a question, just a very simple question. It's more like a procedural question rather than thank you, Lord Mayor. The word urgent, in the light of all sorts of reports that are urgent, literally urgent, what time frame would you say an urgent report could come back to us in, if urgent stays there? Yeah.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I think this is covered largely in the officer response, and that really is that we would be looking to provide a report back on this specific issue, you know, in a timely way, as would be required from the notice of motion if it's supported tonight. But the advice is also clearly that we'd be looking at a comprehensive rating strategy review, which certainly I had discussed also with Deputy Lord Mayor. And that's something that a lot of you have spoken, you know, about tonight. So I guess, you know, in terms of responding to that question, there would be two essentially reports, one in response to this specific notice of motion, but then over time another one in regards to a more comprehensive rating strategy review.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, sorry, just regarding the conflict of interest process. Given that Alderman Sexton has declared an interest in this item, as he's known to have properties listed on short stay accommodation, and others around this table tonight do have properties on short stay accommodation and haven't declared an interest, can I just get some clarity on the process around that, please?
CEO.
Through you, Lord Mayor, and I will ask Paul Jackson to correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the Local Government Act is that it's really incumbent upon each elected member to determine whether they have an interest or not. And indeed, that's something that can be tested. If elected members don't declare an interest, then it's certainly something that could be raised with another jurisdiction to understand whether in fact they do have a conflict of interest. But it's important to note for tonight's proceedings that it is up to each elected member to make their own determination about their level of conflict or pecuniary interest. Lord Mayor, thank you.
Lord Mayor, point of clarification, I believe that was directed at me, and I will explain, and I think it's inappropriate for people to make accusations like that. If they really wanted to do something about it, they could have let me sit here, not clarify anything and take the matter up further, which would have been a total waste of time, because this matter here is referring to residential, Lord Mayor. I own commercial property, and my properties are all commercial. Thank you.
It was actually directed at somebody else, but thank you for clarifying, Marty.
I'm pretty sure that he's directed to me, so can I make a clarification?
My
apologies.
That's fine.
Alderman I think, and this shows that the deficiencies of our way we class complete houses under the short stay accommodation provider that I use, a self-contained part of my house, which is still the same residence, is listed as a complete house. Well, it's not, because I live there. So if Councillor Fox would like to a private conversation, I can explain more personal things if she would like to, but it's the way my provider classes a self-contained part of a personal house as a full house, and it's not.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Deputy, would you like to sum up?
Well, I think we have Lord Mayor, I think we have Alderman Zuko's amendment. And I just want to make a point, or a couple of points. I support A, B and any individual, but beyond that, it's difficult for me to support this in relation to that individuals or associated companies who own residential property. I just don't think it's fleshed out well enough and defined as a shack. So I just wonder if that can be deleted. As far as Part C goes, if a differential rate is struck, the report consider the use of such funds to be used for the homeless and housing. But if Alderman Zuko is willing to put this in and protecting residential amenity, because I think that's important, that doesn't actually get done as thoroughly as it might. So I just wonder if you would mind having and protecting residential amenity.
I think we're getting into a lot of sort of crafting. So I think I'm just going to suggest that
just a point of clarification. Basically, what this is, if you read it, is that the report consider these points.
Oh.
It's not that the report actually take them on. You know.
All right. So I'm just conscious of the time. I'm going to. Would you like to sum up your motion generally?
There's still people that were waiting to speak after the amendment was finished. So that we still haven't. We need to vote on the amendment first, and then.
Amendments.
Clarify. The first amendment was included in, which is yours.
Yes, that's right.
Your amendment.
Oh, that was yours. Oh, okay. All right. No worries. Okay. All right. So, is there any further discussion on the amendment, or
included in?
No.
Not this.
His
not
wasn't. Mine wasn't.
Briscoe's.
No, it wasn't.
So, is everyone clear where this amendment would sit?
No.
Is it after the 2? Is it? Is it a part 3?
Yeah, part 3.
Okay. All right. So, any further? So, I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Show of hands. All those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Briscoe, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
Against.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Fox, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Okay, so that's...
Lost, Lord Mayor.
Right.
5 votes to 6.
Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, Lord Mayor, I was going to get up and be very critical of this motion initially. I thought Alderman Zuko had stolen my line earlier about the fact that this must be an election year, but I won't, because I think that, just on further reflection, housing has been an issue that I think, whilst we might have a wide range of views, I think we've always had pretty good discussions on the broad issue. I think we all agree that there's an issue that needs to be addressed, and where we differ is what we think the solutions are. There are things with this motion that I am strongly against, but there's also some things that I actually don't mind. So I'll start from the negative and I'll work my way up. I don't like part 1, more so the part B. I think that, as Alderman Zuko, I think, said, there's a variety of reasons why land might be vacant. It's not. I know sometimes it's land banking, and I don't want to speak for the Deputy Lord Mayor, but I think that might be what the intention is the land banking. But there's plenty of reasons why. I had a block of land that I bought with my brothers that sat vacant for 2 years, and it wasn't because of land banking. It was actively trying to get stuff done, but having issues with easements and, ironically enough, planning. But you know, and these are things that can happen. There might be other legal reasons why land might be vacant. If I bought a block with the intention of developing it, and perhaps got stuck at council going through amendments and going through applications, am I paying the extra rates because while I'm trying to get housing built on that house? Like I don't think that this is. I get the intent, and I'm not critical of the intent here, but I don't think that this is the right way to go about it. I don't think that this is one of those. I don't think a slightly higher rate would incentivise people that have a good reason of having that land vacant. So, and I do think it enters a bit too strongly into assuming why people are making those decisions on their own property. Similarly with the short stay, I think there's, and I think Alderman Zuko made a few good points. For starters, I do have a question. I do have a question through you to the acting planning director, Lord Mayor. When is we have a report, we had a motion about investigating measures that we could take to regulate and to rein in, I guess, short stay. When is that expected to come back to us?
It's expected through you, Lord Mayor, it's expected on the next City Planning Committee, proposing a different mechanism from the one that was previously approved by the Council.
Okay. So, and this might be another question, sorry, through you, just in regards to this motion. would part the houses identified under Part 1A, would there be a limit? Like if somebody has, when you say whole homes, if somebody has their home on the Airbnb market for 2 months over summer or over winter when they're away, would that classify them for the higher rates, or would there be a threshold there, or is that too?
I mean, I'm just wondering if this is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what the report surely will investigate.
No, I appreciate that.
I don't think it's
Look,
fair
it's just that it does raise a lot of questions, and I think, once again, I don't think it's the right way of going about it. I don't think a slightly higher rate here would change anybody's behaviours when it comes to these applications. I think there are better ways to. Should council wish to look into these, and as was just said, we have this coming back to us very, very shortly, which also does speak to the matter of the urgency. I think this is something that is a long-term policy. I think it's something that would more rightfully be decided under our budget process. But so I won't. I'll resist the urge to be more critical on this, but I won't be supporting Part 1. But there was an intention to vote on this separately. Yeah. So look,
1A and B.
Well, I'm against both, but 1A, 1B, and then Part 2.
No, I think we'll just do it 1 and 2. I'm sorry.
That's look.
I mean, yeah, it's sorry. It has been brought to my attention that there is concern about this. So yeah.
So just I think can I just seek clarification, because I'd vote for 1A but not 1B. Yeah, so
is that what you'd like?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
If I might.
Still standing. What time is it?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I hope that wasn't counting towards my time. In regards to Part 2, though, I do think, and I do firmly believe with these sort of policies that you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I don't mind Part 2. I know there was some suggestion about this sort of going outside of our remit here, but I do think that this could be something that is.
30 seconds.
Can I get an extra 2 minutes, please?
Moved by Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously.
I do think this is something that could be beneficial, and I'd almost take it a bit further, and I'm tempted to move an amendment, and I might do so, but that this also goes towards that there also be a if you're talking variable, like a lower variable or a rebate towards houses on the rental market that are considered to be in the affordable bracket at that 30% of mean income, because I think that is us as a council signalling and incentivising those that are providing housing at that level where we are directly addressing affordable housing in a way that in a mechanism that we can to directly incentivise that. And I think that's a really positive thing that we can do, and I think that complements the Deputy Lord Mayor's motion. So I'm not trying to be like, I think it's actually a good part to the motion. So if
Would you like to add that in, or is it already sort of assumed to be in?
Look, I would be happy to add that in if the seconder is happy with that. Yeah, I think that adds
adding at the end, long-term rental or affordable housing?
Long-term rental or rentals that are, as well as rentals that are within the affordable housing bracket.
And affordable housing rentals.
Yeah, look, so I think there's good parts of this motion. There's parts that I'm strongly against, and I'll just, in the interest of us having had a very good debate here and us having, whilst we do have our rough and tumbles over planning issues and other issues, I think we do always have a pretty mature debate when it comes to the issues of housing, because it is, I think, the most important issue of our day. It's definitely the most important issue of this council. So I'll leave it there. I won't be supporting Part 1 at all, but I'll be supporting Part 2 with that addition as well.
Further discussion?
Yeah, sorry, thank you, Lord Mayor. I really wasn't going to stand up and talk, but I just kind of felt like I had to say something. Just to quote Alderman Zuko, I really feel like the horse is bolted as a result of various different comments that have gone on around the table when we're talking about this is not the right way to go about it, this is a long-term policy we're deciding on. I think that premise is wrong. And the reason why I think that premise is wrong is because points 1 and 2 are doing the exact same thing. What are they doing? They're asking us to provide council, they're asking council officers to provide us council who make the decision with advice. Number one is doing that. Number two is also doing that. We're not deciding any policy, we're asking for a report on these particular issues. And that's just what I wanted to say. I'll be supporting it.
Okay, would you like to sum up?
No, thanks.
No.
No, I don't want to sum up.
So now we're going through 3 votes here. So there's
Lord Mayor, just something I was going to raise before. Some people have actually, on clarification, the vacant land zone as residential has been raised as B. A couple of people have said, look, I can't support that. I just make the point that to support the deputy, 1B, we did make... no, I'm just clarifying the fact that we have got an amendment that's been accepted, which makes it a report. It doesn't say we're not going to rate 1B.
Okay, so I'm going to put it to a vote now. All those in favour of item 1, which is 1A, say aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Fox, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Councillor Coates and Alderman Barakis. That's carried, Lord Mayor. Yeah,
okay.
2 votes against.
And now, item B. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Fox, Alderman Thomas, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis and Alderman Briscoe. 7 votes to 4, Lord Mayor, that's carried.
And finally, item 2. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Carried unanimously.
Very good.
All right.
That's the honey one.
Is everyone still keen to continue?
Yeah.
No.
Come on, it's going to be fast. Here we go.
No, I'm just speaking in general.
Proceed. Does anyone know whether Alderman Sexton's coming back? The officers will get him back. He is. Okay. All right. Item 15. Alderman Thomas, would you like to introduce item 15?
Going to be on 13?
Community culture.
Beer program?
Oh, is that me? Right. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So this is the Children's Mayor program. Basically, just an overview is the inaugural Hobart Children's Mayor program that was delivered in 2021, and the motion is to seek endorsement for the continuation of the program to be run annually as part of the National Children's Week.
Alderman Thomas.
The program was designed to expand upon the annual Children's Week reception that has been offered to Hobart primary schools for more than a decade, and children were invited to submit ideas that they thought would make Hobart a better city for children. Concept proposals range from electric bikes to Aboriginal engagement services for people experiencing homelessness to caring for the spotted handfish. And Alderman and councillors probably recall when they came in, the Children's Mayor and Deputy Lord Mayor as well. So put the motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I wholeheartedly endorse this. I think it was a really good link to what council does and that sort of outreach for various schools. So really pleased to see that breadth of interest in the program. Just a question through you to the appropriate officer. It was suggested that as part of the panel, like deciding panel, that a child be invited to be a part of that. Is that represented in this motion? Or can it be collected up?
Through your Lord Mayor, it's not actually specifically stated in the motion, but we can certainly make sure that happens.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alderman Briscoe.
Yes, I think it was a very good initiative. it happened this year or last year? I can't remember now.
23.
Last year. Just the only thing is that probably elected members weren't aware of it. This year we are going to be aware of it, and let's be kept into the loop, because I would have liked to be involved in those early discussions with their kids. It seemed, so look, now we're aware of it, just make sure, and it's really through you, Lord Mayor, to the administration, that we are aware of when the activities happen, so we can be part of it, because it is Mayor and the Chair and the Mayor and the Deputy Chair is part of the governance of our city, but it's the full council that is the governance body, not those two roles. So if I think sometimes I am taking a tour of students through the town hall on Friday next week, and quite an enthusiastic group. And if we just concentrate that there are two people, it gives the impression that there's not more in the community that are involved. And as we know, 12 people make a decision. So it's a plea through. And I wonder if we could have the officer who just answered. Is that possible, to invite the rest of the elected members to be part of it?
Through you, Lord Mayor, yes, it certainly is in this situation, because we actually had a panel that were involved in determining which children's submissions were successful. So the panel wasn't just elected members, it also included the Children's Commissioner and the CEO as well. But we could certainly send that information out to all elected members prior to the panel meeting.
Yeah, where appropriate, I think. Yeah. Well, I don't think we need to change the motion, but thank you for that.
Okay, I'm going to put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 14, Councillor Sherlock.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm actually delighted to bring this one up, and I really do thank our council officers for putting this forward. It's to install an Aboriginal acknowledgement at the front of the town hall, as per the commitment in the Aboriginal Commitment and Action Plan, the ACAP. During the in-depth engagement process for the ACAP, community feedback clearly indicated a desire for more visible acknowledgements of Aboriginal people, history and culture. There was a particular desire to see these installed in the centre of the city and in council-owned colonial spaces such as Town Hall. In the endorsement of the ACAP, which most of us probably recall, I think we unanimously supported, the City of Hobart committed to building culturally safe spaces for Aboriginal people through flag flying and visible acknowledgements, specifically through ACAP Action 11.2, which says, and I quote, "explore options for a plaque on the outside of the Town Hall acknowledging Aboriginal people." The project design costs of $4,000 include the artist and consultant fees, are included within the operational budget allocation for Aboriginal programs in the current financial year. There is an additional cost of $5,000 for fabrication and installation, which is an operational budget allocation in the current financial year that will be transferred to the Capital Works program to support the project management of the installation. So the recommendation essentially is to approve the installation proposed, and the project is titled I Am Country by artist Caleb Nicholas Mansell, subject to the works obtaining the required planning permit for the installation to proceed. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor.
Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. 15, Alderman Thomas.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I put the motion on the books.
Seconded by Councillor Sherlock.
Yes, the City, the Economic Development Committee received a comprehensive briefing on the current state in terms of Antarctic relationships and the Antarctic cities, or the Antarctic Rim. And there are a number of actions that have been identified, including a part-time youth ambassador. So there's it'll depend very much on your statesmanship, Lord Mayor, dealing with the other mayors of these cities to make this something, because I feel that we are the closest gateway, or this particular part of the country, to the Antarctic, but there'll be a number of people in our community that will see it as simply a port city, and that was it, no further relevance than the fact we just happen to be the closest port. So would we call Antarctic City, have we got the right to call ourselves a special status city? We probably have, but it depends a lot on your office. Thank you.
Further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 16, Alderman Thomas.
Yes, thank you. I put the motion on the books.
Seconded by Councillor Sherlock.
This is, thank you. This is simply a practical measure following COVID and the pandemic and the fact that there's we've basically suspended the relationships except for potentially a little bit of email communication. It's also designed to allow a new city council to rethink international relationships after the new council is sworn in. However, we do have Councillor Harvey and Deputy Lord Mayor Burnett's waste education program still put forward to be reviewed in September 22, so this council can be engaged in that. Thank you.
Further discussion? We have no discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 18 is local government LGAT general meeting motions.
Yes,
Deputy Lord Mayor.
I'll move this, Lord Mayor. There's a recommendation.
Baracus.
There's a recommendation in relation to suggest that we support the motions, and you'll note that one of them, the options for differential rating, Part 2, vacation of rental properties, is from Break a Day Council, which is part of the work that I referred to in my rationale. So. In that last motion, notice of motion that we looked at. So I strongly support all of these. We're looking at supporting looking at derelict and abandoned buildings, options for differential rating, sexual assault motion relating to Our Watch from the Northern Midlands Council. The fringe benefits tax for electric vehicles coming from Brighton Council, really important because there's, they charge quite a lot for the fringe benefits tax. So it means that councils can afford diesel rather than electric vehicles, and fire bunkers as well, which is from Kingborough Council. So I think I'll be up at that meeting on your behalf, Lord Mayor, and would like to seek the endorsement from council in relation to this.
Okay. Further discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. That's carried unanimously. Would someone like to move into the closed? Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Alderman Baracus. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried